This works. All right, we are live on YouTube once again, sharing my screen live on YouTube so you can see the draft as I'm doing it. I'm doing a live best ball draft right now on YouTube. I'll be talking through the picks as I make them. This is like my 120th of these drafts, so I have a pretty good feel for the average draft position now. Dalvin's injuries scare me every year. Yeah, don't let the injuries scare you, though, because every player has such a high injury probability, especially the running back position. Let's not pretend like we know who's going to get hurt. This is basically the way I look at injuries in fantasy football. I actually think it's an edge to be had to just basically completely ignore injuries. Najee Harris. Yeah, I get the 7th overall pick in this draft. I'm doing live on Underdog on YouTube. If you just search WalterPicks on YouTube, or if you just go to our link tree in the audio works now. Let's go, Jeremy. That's what I'm talking about. How's it going, guys? YouTube, I appreciate you. If you're tuning into the YouTube channel, hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. It does help me out a ton. What do you think about Michael Thomas this year? Michael Thomas is, I think, my 5th most drafted wide receiver. And he's by far the most expensive name on this list, too. I'm getting him in 25% of the drafts I've done. I've done about 120 drafts. And I just won't let Michael Thomas fall past me in the 3rd round. And that's basically what I've done in every draft where I've gotten him. I've gotten him in the 3rd round, which I think is insane value. I think he could easily see 160-plus targets this season, especially if Jameis Winston wins that job. He's almost definitely going to outproduce his 3rd round cost. Thoughts on Damian Harris? Damian Harris is also, I'm starting to talk myself very into Damian Harris. Damian Harris, especially at his cost. If I go back to my running backs here, this is my most drafted running backs. Damian Harris is 2nd. And this was not intended. I got him also in about 25% of the drafts that I've done. I'm actually doing a live draft right now on YouTube. I got the 7th pick. We've seen Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, then Dalvin Cook go as the first 3. This is one of the most common openings I've seen. Thoughts on Robert Woods? Yeah, Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee, they're all probably undervalued just because Matthew Stafford is so much better than Jared Goff. I don't think people quite realize. And I'm on the clock here, and it's Ezekiel Elliott or Travis Kelce for me here. I have the 7th overall pick. The top 6, as expected, have already gone off the board. And I'm going to go with Travis Kelce. I like going with him 1st round because, especially in this format, I only need 2 tight ends now on my team. I'm only going to draft 2 tight ends. I just drafted Travis Kelce in the 1st round, which basically frees up a roster spot for an additional running back or wide receiver later. So I do like it. And if we look at the draft board here for a second, if you're on YouTube, you can see this draft happening live. If we look at the draft board, we can see how the 1st round is shaping out. Travis Kelce, I just took him 7th overall over Ezekiel Elliott. And I like Ezekiel Elliott a lot. I think we'll look back at the end and maybe regret the Travis Kelce over Ezekiel Elliott decision. But there's so few good tight ends still. Travis Kelce is the single biggest positional advantage you can get. I can lead this league in tight end scoring with one less tight end than everyone else is drafting. What is your favorite draft position and who would you draft there? My favorite draft position, I love this question every year, it's almost always 1st overall pick for the last 2 years, at least for me. I would have taken Christian McCaffrey 1st last year, though, so obviously that wouldn't have worked out well. This year, again, I'm taking Christian McCaffrey 1st overall. And I also like what's there in the 2nd and 3rd round, too, with the 1st pick, which is, I think, why it wins out for me. But I do like the back end of the draft, too. If you don't get a top 4 pick, Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara. The back half of the draft, the back half of the 1st round, you're getting Cam Akers and Austin Eckler potentially on the same team. I'm about to be back on the clock here. Let's see who's available. I can't take Clyde Edwards-Helaire because I already have Travis Kelce. The running backs are not looking great. But I think I'm going to go with Devontae Adams here. I took Devontae Adams over Calvin Ridley. I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like I might prefer Calvin Ridley in basketball over Devontae Adams, but I do kind of feel like as the Aaron Rodgers news has kind of prolonged, and we still do not know if Aaron Rodgers is playing this season. some of the Packers players are starting to become a little bit of a value. I mean, Devontae Adams was the wide receiver 1 last season pretty handedly. And if Aaron Rodgers does play, getting Devontae Adams in the second round is not going to be a bad thing. And I think that I am now open to starting this draft as a 0 running back draft. I have no running backs for the first 2 rounds, which is rare for me. Usually, I think I did this on one of the last live streams too. They are fun rosters to build. No Hunter Henry or Smith this year. No good. The two together will not perform. Listen, Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, I think the Patriots are going to run a ton of 2 tight end sets this season. I'm very excited about the Patriots running game. I think the offensive line is a top 3 offensive line in the league. It's my really only hope as a Patriots fan for the team to be good. And Damian Harris is going in like the 7th and 8th round in fantasy drafts too. So I've drafted him a ton. You can see he's second on the list here behind Kareem Hunt. But the guy, and I am live right now on YouTube. I'm going to be live for the next 3-ish hours. I'm going to be doing at least 2 to 3 drafts on this live stream. And if you go to the YouTube live, appreciate everyone that's tuned in on YouTube. Hit that like button. That does help me out a ton. Takes you 3 seconds. And you'll be able to watch this draft live as I am doing it. I'll talk through some of the picks that I'm making. This is a best ball format, which means I do not make roster moves throughout the season. And I don't have to make start-sit decisions either. It automatically inputs the best lineup for me at the end of each week, which means roster construction is everything in these leagues. And I've analyzed the roster construction, 1,000 historical leagues, and we've simulated 5,000 future leagues in this format, and I've basically found that 3 to 5 running backs is the optimal roster construction strategy with 2 to 3 quarterbacks, 2 to 3 tight ends, and the rest of your team wide receivers. The nice thing about wide receiver is you can make up for the position by just drafting a lot of receivers. You can also start 4 receivers each week, which to me makes them the most valuable position. All right, I'm about to be back on the clock. And I'm going to go with DeAndre Swift with this pick. I was really hoping he would still be there. DeAndre Swift is someone I have started to talk myself into in the 3rd round. There is definitely concerns with him, right? The Lions might not score a lot of points. Their offense could be the worst offense in the NFL. It could easily be bottom 3. They have Jared Goff now as their starting quarterback, who is always never that great. And they have their top 3 wide receivers, Rashad Perriman, Tyrell Williams, Quintez Cephas, Amon St. Brown. No real, even number 2 wide receiver on that list. They're basically all wide receiver 3s on most other teams in the NFL. It's an atrocious wide receiver depth chart. And DeAndre Swift and TJ Hawkinson could lead this team in targets. And they have a very good offensive line. So there's a lot going for DeAndre Swift, so I'm glad I got him here, especially since I didn't get a running back in the first 2 rounds. We see a good group of wide receivers go here. I really like Allen Robinson and Amari Cooper in the 3rd round as well. Who are the top 5 picks? In this draft that I just did, this is actually the most common top 5 picks I've seen. Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, Saquon Barkley. I've seen Saquon Barkley, though, recently go much, much later in the 1st round. Some people are very concerned pretty clearly about Saquon Barkley. And I wouldn't be surprised if come August, when it's officially announced Saquon Barkley's not playing week 1, which seems like a real possibility, he could end up going in the back of the 1st round, which I think is going to be a good value. Like, once Saquon Barkley is fully healthy, and he will be early in the season, he's going to ball out, guys. So I'm not that worried about Saquon Barkley. As long as he can play by like week 3, he'll be fine. He'll be fine for fantasy. All right, and I'm about to be on the clock again. And I will consider Chris Carson here, definitely. And if you're watching live on TikTok, we are live on YouTube sharing the draft board, so you can see the draft as I'm doing it. Patrick Mahomes just went in the 4th round, which is pretty wild. That's one of the latest I've seen him go. Chris Carson gets picked right before me. I do like Tyler Lockett a lot. I like Robert Woods a lot. I'm going with Robert Woods here. Continuing the 0 RB build with 1 running back. I'm liking the upside of this roster so far. Jalen Hurts will put up huge numbers. I like Jalen Hurts a lot. Jalen Hurts, though, is going as like the 8th or 7th quarterback in most drafts. So he's pretty much priced at like a pretty reasonable cost. He's going to be like a 7th or 8th round pick, which I still think could end up working out. We've seen time and time again, rushing quarterbacks in fantasy football are the most valuable assets at the position. So I do think that Jalen Hurts has a ton of upside. But there's a lot of other good rushing quarterbacks in the league, and I have been talking myself more and more into quarterbacks in the 5th round of fantasy drafts, because you're getting guys a lot of times in the drafts I've done so far, like Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen in the 5th round. And you can see this happening in the draft I'm doing live on YouTube right now. I'm sharing this draft board. Take a look at this. Kyle Pitts going at the back end of the 4th round. I think that's actually a pretty decent value as well. I've been taking him before the news. You were able to get him in the 5th round, and so I'm glad I drafted him a lot earlier in the offseason. I like the 4th pick. First I got Kamara, then Swift, then Mike Thomas. Yeah, that's a fire start to a draft. You have Alvin Kamara, DeAndre Swift, and Michael Thomas. Honestly, the most frustrating part, I think, about that, like the 4th overall pick for me this season, is I always end up with both Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas, and I don't love that. I would rather just have one of them. I don't feel like that's a great stack to have, because both of them need a lot of volume. I feel like it's kind of risky to have both of them, honestly. But I do like Alvin Kamara 4th overall, and anytime Michael Thomas is available in the 3rd round, I'm pulling the trigger on him anytime. I'm not letting the bad stack talk me out of a 3rd round Michael Thomas. It's still a good value. DJ Moore and Cooper Kupp go at the back end of the 4th round. Let's look at the wide receivers that are still left. I'm going to need some running backs later in this draft as well. Ayuka the Bazooka gets picked. Look at this. Quarterback still available. Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson. We are in the 5th round. And I feel like the late round quarterback strategy has been the best fantasy football approach for like at least a decade now. But that doesn't mean it's always going to. And Dak Prescott gets picked before Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson. That is not something you see very often. I definitely would not do that. But I do think that you're starting to see potentially people overcompensate for the late round quarterback strategy, because you're getting a top 3 quarterback in a group of quarterbacks that had a historic year last year. The quarterback fantasy scoring was its highest ever. And there's actually a bigger gap between Tier 1 and Tier 2 quarterbacks now than there used to be in fantasy football. And I think the rushing and passing combined makes for such a unique fantasy profile. And I'm going to take Josh Allen, I think, over Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson. I like all 3 of them pretty similarly, but I feel like I end up with Josh Allen less, because I like to take the last of who's left out of this group. But I just got Josh Allen in the 5th round. If you look at my squad here, I'm liking the upside, at least, of the team so far. I'm going to need to get kind of lucky with 1 or 2 running backs in the later part of this draft. I'll probably end up drafting, I'll move myself here, I'll probably end up drafting 4 running backs. Dude on the right said, screw it. 4 wide receivers in the first 4 rounds. Yeah, I honestly don't hate this. This guy's also running with the 0 running back approach and really hammering wide receiver. And the reason I don't hate the 0 running back in a tournament like this, I'm competing against hundreds of thousands of people, is it is prioritizing what I see as the most valuable positions in this format. That's why I draft so many wide receivers. I draft like 9 to 10 wide receivers in every draft, because you can start 4 of them. There's 3 wide receiver slots, 1 flex. There's only 2 running backs. But you only need to start 2 running backs. It's not that many. 1 quarterback, 1 tight end, but you can start 4 wide receivers. So I do think it makes some sense, and he gets Kyler Murray. Let's see if he continues with the 0 running back approach here. He had the 12th overall pick, and he got 2 of potentially the top 5 wide receivers. And he stacked Mike Evans and Chris Godwin too, so he's got some upside. Yeah, Godwin and Evans stack is gonna be a tough one, I think. Who would you rather have in a PPR league, Hopkins or Ridley? I think I would, at this moment in time, Calvin Ridley to me has a higher ceiling than DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins, though, I will argue this all offseason, he is the safest wide receiver in fantasy. There's no safer wide receiver than DeAndre Hopkins. He has had 3 straight seasons with over 150 targets. He's been the definition of durable. He has the best quarterback throwing to him in his career. He's going to have his first real offseason. Can you do a public draft so your fans can draft with you? Luis, yes, we will do these. Not today, but we definitely will. And we do have that ability. So, Luis, I'm looking forward to that later in, as we get closer to the season. Lamar Jackson goes in the 6th round, which makes me feel a lot worse about Josh Allen in the 5th round. Myles Gaskin's still sitting there at a pretty good value based on his ADP. I think I'm going to take him here. I only have 1 running back. Let's take a look at how this looks now. I got my second running back, Myles Gaskin. So I got DeAndre Swift and Myles Gaskin on what I think could be behind two underrated offensive lines. I definitely think the Lions can have a top 10 offensive line. And the Miami Dolphins, I haven't drafted that much of Myles Gaskin, but the Miami Dolphins had every opportunity to find someone to replace or be ahead of Myles Gaskin, and all they did was go out and get Malcolm Brown. And this Malcolm Brown is a bit of a concern. Malcolm Brown could steal the goal line carries away from Myles Gaskin, but Myles Gaskin is going to be the first and second down back at a minimum for a Dolphins team that I honestly think is a little bit underrated. I think Tua, there is a more likely chance than most people realize that he could actually be very good in the NFL, and they've surrounded him with more talent this offseason. He's reconnecting with a receiver he's already played with, Jalen Waddle, who he's very excited about. They brought in Will Fuller. Gesicki is still there. Devontae Parker has been very consistent over the last couple of years, more consistent than most non-Miami Dolphins fans realize. So there's some reasons I'm kind of bullish on the Miami Dolphins in general. And especially with only having one running back through the first 3 rounds, I'm pretty happy with landing him. Let's see how far after his average draft position we actually ended up getting him. Yeah, we got him about 11 picks behind his average draft position, which is very nice. If we look at the running backs available now, too, I would definitely much rather Myles Gaskin than all of these guys, so I'm glad I pulled the trigger. I'm going to talk myself into Damian Harris here, I think. I've already talked a little bit about why I'm in on Damian Harris in the 7th and 8th round. I think that the clear strength of the Patriots is their offensive line. It's the very clear strength of the team. They could have a top 3 offensive line in the NFL. And they also, what did they do this offseason? They went out, they spent a ton of money on Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry. They're going back to the system they ran with Gronkowski and Hernandez. It's going to be a 2 tight end system for probably the highest percentage of potentially across the league. And I'll pair that with a top 3 offensive line. Damian Harris could rush for over 1,000 yards, and you're getting him in the 7th and 8th round. He doesn't have that much receiving upside, and if Cam Newton is starting, he's not going to score as many touchdowns, but he could average 80-plus yards a game on the ground. So I'm in on him on the 7th and 8th round. I now have 3 starting running backs, potentially, on this team, and a very good base of wide receiver, tight end, and quarterback. I'm only going to need 1 more quarterback and 1 more tight end. I'm going to draft 1 more running back, probably then the rest of my team will be wide receivers. And again, if you're watching live on TikTok, I'm live on YouTube right now as well. Going to get to some of your questions. The RB wasteland, yeah, Tyler. This is where I'm drafting right now because this is what you get when you skip out on running backs in the first 2 rounds. I got DeAndre Swift in the 3rd round. I am starting to like DeAndre Swift a lot more. And then I got Myles Gaskin and Damian Harris in the 6th and 7th rounds, which isn't terrible and pretty good based on their average draft position. But I'm about to be back on the clock again. And, this is, to me, right now, where we are, this is, the true running back dead zone. I don't want anything to do with Melvin Gordon or Leonard Fournette or Ronald Jones. I can talk myself into A.J. Dillon in, maybe 2 full rounds from now. Tony Pollard, Kenyon Drake, same thing. I'm not willing to spend any reasonable draft pick on these guys that we've, such high uncertainty about. Especially when there's still good wide receivers available. All 3 of these guys are guys that I've been targeting late in drafts. Again, I think wide receiver is one of the most important positions. I'm going to go with Michael Gallup here, and hopefully I can get one of these 3 wide receivers with my next pick. Pitts or Waller? It's Waller, definitely. The tiers of tight ends go like this. It's Travis Kelce in his own tier. He's tier 1. I actually took him with the 7th overall pick in the draft I'm doing right now live on YouTube. I took him 7th overall in this draft because, 1, in the best ball format that I'm playing, drafting an early tight end allows you to only draft 2 tight ends, which is an inherent advantage. But also, he is basically scoring at a wide receiver 1 level, which is almost never seen at the tight end position in a historically bad group of tight ends. Tight ends are not putting up the numbers that we have seen historically. It's an underused position kind of across the league. There's most of the tight ends in the league, you are uncertain about them even getting 5 targets in a given week. Travis Kelce's getting 12 targets a game in the best offense in the NFL, tethered to one of the best quarterbacks already in the history of the NFL. So there's a lot going for Travis Kelce. He's in a tier of his own. Tier 2 of tight ends, though, to me, Darren Waller and George Kittle. And I think Kyle Pitts will be in that tier. The question is when. But I put him a little bit below those other two guys. I think Kyle Pitts is the clear 4 for me, though. What do you guys think? Do you think that's a fair ranking of the 4 tight ends? Travis Kelce, number 1. Darren Waller over George Kittle for me. The difference between Darren Waller and George Kittle, Darren Waller is just significantly safer. Darren Waller is one of 2 tight ends. There's 2 tight ends last season that had at least 5 targets in every single game, except for one. It was Darren Waller, and it was Travis Kelce. End of list. And George Kittle also has the threat of Trey Lance winning the starting quarterback role. If that happens, that's not good news for George Kittle's fantasy value. It's going to be a very run-first team. It's going to be a lot like the RG3 offense. It's going to be very exciting, but similar to how we don't want to get a lot of Mark Andrews or Rashad Bateman or Marquise Brown early, it's because the Ravens run at such a high rate because Lamar Jackson is such a dynamic runner. Trey Lance can end up being something very similar. How much would Gurley joining the Lions hurt Swift's value? Yeah, I don't think it would change it that much. Jamal Williams is still going to be involved. This is the other big concern with DeAndre Swift, is that Jamal Williams is very clearly going to be involved, probably get between 30 to 40% of the carries. The big upside for DeAndre Swift, though, is the targets. If he can be very involved in the passing game, he can definitely still return value in the 3rd round. That's going to be, and the reason that you can be optimistic about that is his main competition for targets is TJ Hawkinson, and then who knows? That's how bad the Lions' wide receivers are. So that could actually end up playing to the advantage of DeAndre Swift. I'm back on the clock here, and I'm going to go with Michael Pittman. I've been drafting him as much as I possibly can. I think that the other nice thing about drafting Michael Pittman in these best ball leagues, I just got him in the 9th round. He could very, very well lead the Colts in targets this season. But if he doesn't, it's not going to be the worst thing for me because I'm going to be able to get T.Y. Hilton and Paris Campbell much later in this draft. And this is one of the cheaper stacks and a 3 wide receiver stack where I'm bullish on Carson Wentz overall. I think Carson Wentz is an underrated quarterback who's back in a position to be successful behind a good offensive line with better wide receivers than he's basically ever had. So I'm excited about the Colts offense and getting Michael Pittman in round 9, probably T.Y. Hilton in round 11 or 12, and then Paris Campbell even later. It's a very cheap stack where I'm basically just buying the whole passing offense for not that much of a cost. Are you still hiring people to run an account for every NFL team? Good question. We have a big update coming out about this in the next 3 to 5 days, probably. It's going to be a very exciting announcement, but the short answer to your question is yes. We are still moving forward with that plan. It's about to be official that we do have 32 people, 1 for each NFL team. We're getting extremely close. I'm very, very excited about it. And I'm still, it still is just Sam's crazy idea, but it's coming to life. So I'm super excited to see how it goes and see where it goes because I'm very optimistic about the group of 32 people that we are bringing in. I've talked with all of them. We had over 3,000 applicants for the position. We interviewed over 150 people for our creator program that we're doing. And we are narrowing it down to 32, and I'm very optimistic about who's on the team. I'm excited for all of you to meet them. Who are the top 5 quarterbacks? The top 5 quarterbacks are Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, and Lamar Jackson. Those are the clear top 4, and then Dak Prescott's probably number 5. But I think the top 4 are a little bit more sought after in fantasy just because they have a higher rushing upside than Dak. Dak is not going to run very much. The difference in viewers when fantasy football hasn't started yet. Yeah, I know, Yarsma, but I'm getting my training in before season. This is like my training camp, man. I'm excited to be back on the live streams. It's been a lot of fun. I need another running back, but I think I'm actually going to go wide receiver here because I saw Darnell Mooney is still available, and he's another guy I'm trying to get in as many drafts as I can. Darnell Mooney is, one, he's tethered to Justin Fields, who I believe is a much overlooked quarterback. He was throughout the entire draft, and I think the sooner he starts, the better for the Bears. But I think that offense, even with Andy Dalton as the number 2 wide receiver behind Allen Robinson, they don't have that much receiving behind Darnell Mooney. So I'm excited about him in the 10th round, especially in a best ball draft. I don't need to decide which weeks he's going to go off. I just need him to get a couple weeks with 100-plus yards. I definitely think he has it in him. Thoughts on Jonathan Taylor? Yeah, Jonathan Taylor, to me, the most risky first-round pick. I don't think there's a more risky first-round pick in fantasy football than Jonathan Taylor. If we just look at this first round, again, if you're watching live on YouTube, I'm doing a draft live right now. We can look through the draft board on this YouTube stream. And if we look through this first round, is there a riskier player drafted in the first round? Take a look at who goes in the first round. Christian McCaffrey, definitely not. Derrick Henry, as safe as it gets. Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara are the obvious top 4 picks. Saquon Barkley, I think you can start considering as soon as 5, but there are some concerns. He's not going to be playing week 1, or he's going to be severely limited week 1, which is a real concern for fantasy. It's missed weeks, especially in a best ball league. You don't want to be missing weeks, but if he's back week 2 at full strength, you're still going to want Saquon Barkley in fantasy football. Jonathan Taylor is, to me, a little bit riskier than Saquon. If we ignore injuries, which I mostly just completely ignore injuries because I don't pretend like I know who's going to get injured. And if we ignore injuries, I would prefer Saquon Barkley over Jonathan Taylor, even if Saquon misses the first week. If it's 2 weeks, then I'd probably want Jonathan Taylor more. I think I'd rather Ezekiel Elliott over both of them at this point, though. Travis Kelce's also about as safe as it gets. You're basically getting a wide receiver 1 in your tight end slot, tethered to one of the best quarterbacks ever, and the current best, most talented quarterback in the NFL. Cam Akers and Austin Eckler, I would argue, could be safer than Jonathan Taylor as well. And Stephon Diggs is also a lock to be a top 12 wide receiver in fantasy. So I don't think there's bigger risk than Jonathan Taylor, but all that said, Jonathan Taylor still has insane upside. If he does get the ball 20 times a game, he's going to be a top 5 running back in fantasy because he's that talented behind a very good offensive line. The only real concern with him is Marlon Mack and Nyheim Hines and how much they're going to be involved. Now, I'm about to be back on the clock here. I still need a quarterback, a running back, and a tight end. Aaron Rodgers is still available. I'm going to go with Rodgers here. It's okay. I took T.Y. Hilton instead. We got to finish this Colts stack. Now I just need Paris Campbell, and I'll have finished the Colts stack. Top 3 running backs to draft. Let me give you one running back I like in each of the first 3 rounds. In round 1, I absolutely love the first 4 running backs: Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry. These are the safest running backs pretty clearly in fantasy. After that, I like Ezekiel Elliott, I like Cam Akers, I like Austin Eckler a lot. All 3 of those guys I think are locks to be running back 1s if they can just stay healthy for the season. After those guys, in round 2, Najee Harris. He's one of the few running backs in the league that could legitimately see 300 carries. So I like Najee Harris in the second round as well. If Austin Eckler or Cam Akers fall to the second round, which I see all the time, I also like them. I'm talking myself into Joe Mixon. I think that Joe Mixon is going to be on the field for 90% of the Bengals' plays, and I think the Bengals' offense is going to take a big leap this season. And if Joe Mixon can just stay healthy for an entire season, he averaged like 16 fantasy points a game last season, which is top 10 running back numbers. So if he can just stay healthy, I can talk myself into Joe Mixon in the second round. But in the third round, the guy that I'm talking myself into more and more is this guy right behind me, DeAndre Swift, if you're watching on TikTok. And here come the quarterbacks. I'm going to take Trey Lance or Aaron Rodgers with this next pick. And I'm going to go Trey Lance instead, because the Trey Lance Josh Allen combo is just too good to pass up. And I'm not 100% sure Aaron Rodgers is going to be playing or not. I've drafted him a few times just in case, because if he does end up playing, this is an insane value, 12th round for MVP Aaron Rodgers. And he could also end up playing for someone else if they do actually end up trading him. But those are 3 running backs I really like to draft, in each one in each round. I'm hoping to get Paris Campbell late in this draft as well to finish out the Indianapolis Colts stack that I got going here. Michael Pittman, T.Y. Hilton, and if you look, Carson Wentz is even still available. I'm not going to draft him because I already have 2 quarterbacks and I already have Josh Allen on this team as well. I am going to draft one more running back. It might end up being Sony Michel. The I don't like to draft backups, but Sony Michel is available in the last round. So it's kind of like a free added safety net at my running back position. We're in a pick that for most people, their last round pick literally will do nothing for them the entire season. It's an 18 round draft. The 18th round, I'm usually taking Cordero Patterson with my last pick because I think Cordero Patterson has upside. He could be the running back for the Atlanta Falcons. He could be their number 2 running back. He also could be their number 4 wide receiver. The training camp reports, by the way, about Cordero Patterson is that he's solely been lining up as a running back, which is actually exciting for him. I'm surprised this didn't get picked up by more people, but he's actually only playing running back so far through the first parts of camp for the Atlanta Falcons. And it won't surprise me if they keep it like that. I wonder if these platforms are going to change him to a running back. That's going to be interesting because he is going to be in the backfield, I think, more than he is out as a wide receiver this season. Brady declined this year. No, I'm probably not. The one thing with Tom Brady is that he's so old at this point that he needs to stay healthy. He can't deal with injuries at this age. So as long as he can stay healthy, which he can, he has a very good offensive line, and he's been pretty smart about taking hits over the last 3 years. So if he can stay healthy, I'm not expecting any decline. He's also in the offense designed for deep passing. They led the league in deep targets, deep passing attempts 2 straight seasons with Jameis Winston and with Tom Brady. I'm about to be back on the clock here. If we look at the running backs available, by the way, I'm probably going to end up going with Devin Singletary. Devin Singletary could be getting half the work for the Buffalo Bills, and I don't love that I'm stacking him with Josh Allen, but he's only behind Zach Moss. And I think there's a very real chance Devin Singletary is better than Zach Moss. I like Zach Moss, honestly, at where he's being picked as well. But if we look at where he's being drafted, let's take a look at where Zach Moss was drafted. He went in the 7th round, and I'm getting Devin Singletary in the 3rd round. Not bad at all. Getting him in a 6th round discount from Zach Moss. And the latest report on Devin Singletary is competition remains as is with Zach Moss. So he's my 4th running back. I don't hate it. I got him at a decent value as well. And now the rest of my team, I need one more tight end, and then the rest of my team will be wide receivers. Thoughts on Tua for the upcoming season? Yeah, I'm actually more optimistic about Tua than I think most people are. I do think that most people are doubting Tua. There's like these weird reports that his own teammates were doubting him. Tua comes from a very good profile. He was an early round pick. He excelled in college. He had very good accuracy. One of the most accurate college quarterbacks of all time. I still think there's a chance for Tua, and they gave him more weapons this season. So at a minimum, he's going to get better. The question is how much better. And I think that Tua has more upside than what most people realize. Nolan, give me a message on TikTok. It looks like we're friends. Let me know what's going on. We can try to fix that for you. Hopefully that's not a widespread issue. Hey Sam, I have a question about EV that you mentioned on the other stream. You said that picking a risky player / roster could increase your playoff probability, which would raise your EV. Yeah, Bears 54. Yeah, again, I'll talk through this again. It's about expected value, and I'm going to try to make a video about this on TikTok definitely, so it helps me to talk through it as well to make sure my logic here makes sense. But basically, expected value is the outcome you're getting. So an amount of money in this example, if I come in first place, I get $1 million. So with the amount of money I get is $1 million. The probability I win that's like 0.0001% or something like that, which means my overall expected value is like $1,000 or $10,000 or something like that. And if the expected value is more than what you're spending, right? So it's going to cost me about $3,000 to enter 150 lineups into this contest. So if I win 10,000, I'm risking 3,000. That's a positive EV. But if I can just increase that percentage at the $1 million prize by like 1%, the expected value will go up so much because it's the $1 million prize, right? So I go with high risk, high upside, because if I can just give myself a slightly higher chance at the top prize, which is really what I am going for. Let's see the tight ends available here. Gerald Everett signed me up as my last tight end here. But if I can just increase the probability of me getting the $1 million prize and really focus on the upside of the tournament, this is like basic tournament strategy in poker tournaments as well. When you play in tournaments in poker, when you're playing with a lot of people, you need to take risks because, like, if you think about it, everyone is the same exact skill level, right? You have like 1 divided by however many people are playing's chance to actually win. It's very low, and you gotta like be given a chance to get the top prize because that's the most valuable prize for it to be positive EV, I think, for you. That's kind of my general logic. I'm going to try to make a video about it, though. But I definitely think the upside in trying to build a roster that could have a legit chance at the end of the season to win that $1 million prize is the ultimate goal. Which is why, like, it's okay if half my teams are completely terrible as long as the other half does exceptionally good, right? I need a few teams to do exceptionally well. What are your thoughts on Brandon Cooks, assuming he has Deshaun or serviceable QB? Yeah, I don't think he's going to have Deshaun Watson. We haven't heard anything about Deshaun Watson for quite some time. No, not that much has changed over the last few weeks. So it'll be interesting to see what the NFL eventually says about that. But I'm not expecting to see him at all this season. And I think that Brandon Cooks, though, especially in a best ball format, I can talk myself into. He's the clear wide receiver 1. Yarshman says, everyone make sure to drop a like and subscribe so Sam can get a new Jameson Crowder is Elite jersey. That is what I'm talking about, Yarshma. And someone asked about, on the TikTok stream, someone asked about the update on our 32 creators that we are bringing on to the WalterPicks team, 1 for each NFL team. And recently, Yarshma, we ordered an NFL jersey for every single one of them. So I have 32 NFL jerseys on their way to me, which is exciting. If you can increase your probability of making the tournament, that increases your total EV. Yeah, you want as many tickets, obviously, in that final round as possible. But you really want not even just to get into that final tournament, but you need your teams to have a chance to actually win that final tournament. They're gonna need to score a lot of points to win. Like you need to run good for like 3 straight weeks, and you need as many of your players healthy as possible too, which obviously comes in this format. I'm going to take Amon-Ra. I already have DeAndre Swift, though. So I'm going to go with Jamison Crowder instead. I feel like I'm getting Jamison Crowder in the 15th round. You can't not expect me to draft some Jamison Crowder when he's available in the 15th and 16th rounds of fantasy drafts. He is still elite, of course. The question is how healthy he is and how much opportunity the team gives him. Jameson Elite Crowder will forever be an elite wide receiver in the NFL and is far overlooked by the common NFL fan. Jameson Elite Crowder. I got to get his jersey definitely soon. But I can talk myself into him in the 15th round. Elijah Moore is good. I believe in Elijah Moore. He's actually one of my top 5 most drafted wide receivers in this format. I think Elijah Moore is a very, very good prospect, and I'm excited about him in the NFL. I think he's the number 1 receiver for the Jets. I also think that Corey Davis is a generally underrated receiver. He was actually really consistent last season in fantasy. He only had 2 games below 10 fantasy points. Most people would not expect that stat. Only 2 games below 10 fantasy points in PPR leagues for Corey Davis last season. By far his most consistent season in the NFL. And I think that Jameson Elite Crowder is still one of the better receivers, though, even with those 2 wide receivers. I think he's still going to be involved in the offense. And I think he can have a couple good weeks. We've seen multiple games now with Jameson Elite Crowder commanding massive target shares, 15-plus targets in a game. Who should I look for at the 5th pick? Yeah, the first 4 picks should be Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, and Alvin Kamara. So if any of those guys are left, definitely take them with the 5th pick. But if not, then you're looking at Saquon Barkley or Ezekiel Elliott, and I personally would go Zeke. A lot of people are drafting Jonathan Taylor before Ezekiel Elliott as well. I would still take Ezekiel Elliott. And at this point with Saquon Barkley, he could miss the first week. So how okay with you are that? Are you okay with Saquon Barkley, your first round pick, not playing in week 1 or maybe week 2 as well? I'm going to take Marquez Valdes-Scantling here, see if I can get a little bit of a Green Bay Packers stack at the end of this draft. They've also been one of the cheapest wide receiver stacks. And again, Aaron Rodgers probably isn't going to play for the Packers this season, but he still could. It's still definitely possible. And you see Amari Rodgers get picked a couple picks after Scantling. But a lot of times you can get both these guys in like the 16th, 17th round, and you're basically getting the 2nd and 3rd wide receivers for the Packers with like no cost associated at all. Thoughts on DK? Yeah, I like DK Metcalf a lot. I think that Tyler Lockett is the better value over DK Metcalf right now. just because Tyler Lockett's going like 3 full rounds after DK Metcalf, and he's not that much different from a fantasy football perspective. He's definitely more volatile, but he has similar upside to DK Metcalf. But I do like DK a lot. I think DK Metcalf has very well within his range of outcomes, 1,200 yard, 10 touchdown season, which would put him squarely as a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy. The upside is absolutely there for DK Metcalf, tethered to still one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league. No, Yarsman, none of those were Jameson Elite Crowder jerseys. Where is Russell Wilson in your quarterback rankings? I don't have him very high. If we looked at my quarterback rankings, I think that and we'll see them in a second once we start this next draft. But I would rank Jalen Hurts, I think, ahead of Russell Wilson, which probably puts me lower on Russell Wilson than the majority of people. Haven't seen you in a while. How's it going, Walter? Matt or Sam? It's Sam, Matt. I appreciate it. It's a classic mistake. Don't worry about it. But I'm doing fantastic, man. I'm doing fantastic. I'm excited to be back on the live stream wavelengths and doing some drafts. It's been a fun off season, but I cannot wait. I cannot wait for the NFL to start, guys. I'm getting very excited. Every day we're getting one day closer to the NFL season. DK or Allen Robinson? I would personally probably go DK Metcalf, but I won't be surprised at all if Allen Robinson is far more consistent and ends up being overall better than Allen Robinson, if Justin Fields can win the quarterback job sooner rather than later. And this is the 17th round. I'm going to take Byron Pringle here. No more Sammy Watkins. A lot of people are assuming McCole Hardman's going to win that second wide receiver role for the Chiefs. It could very easily be a mix of McCole Hardman and Byron Pringle and some of the other receivers that the Chiefs have. I just need 1 or 2 good weeks out of him. Even just one big week, this would end up being really valuable for this team. And again, this could be the upside player that ends up winning me the $1 million prize once I'm actually in the playoffs of this fantasy competition. Just traded Derrick Henry and Tyler Boyd for Christian McCaffrey. Wow, what a trade. In a PPR league, I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. In a PPR league, Christian McCaffrey is by far the most valuable asset in any format. Christian McCaffrey had the second best fantasy football season of all time just 2 years ago, and he's still like 25 years old. He has a lot of successful seasons ahead of him. If he can just stay healthy, the receiving workload he receives on top of the rushing workload, he's basically a running back 1 and a wide receiver 1 combined into one player. It's absolutely insane. So I don't hate it in a PPR league. In a non-PPR league, though, I would not be trading Derrick Henry and Tyler Boyd for Christian McCaffrey. I have Cook, DK, and Kittle. Who should I look for? 4th round pick. You have Dalvin Cook, DK Metcalf, and George Kittle. Tim Patrick could be a good pick. Yeah, he's available, but I'm gonna be sticking with my guy here, who I've been drafting with my last pick over and over and over and over again, and it is Cordero Patterson. And I finished this team. I ended up with 10 wide receivers in a 0 running back approach. I started off this draft with Travis Kelce, so I could very well lead this league in tight end scoring. He's basically a wide receiver 1 in my tight end slot. And then I have Gerald Everett, who has some upside, but if this team is going to win, it's going to be with Travis Kelce doing really well. I then drafted Devontae Adams with my 2nd round pick. If Aaron Rodgers plays, obviously that's going to be a good thing for this team. And I actually got Scantling later in the draft too, who I think still has a shot to be the number 2 receiver for an Aaron Rodgers-led offense. If Aaron Rodgers plays, I think that's like a 50-50 shot. I got Robert Woods, Michael Gallup, Michael Pittman, Darnell Mooney. All 4 of these are a good group of 5 wide receivers. I only need 4 of them. I need to start 4 of them each week. And then I didn't end up getting the Paris Campbell stack, but I did snag T.Y. Hilton. There's some upside here, but these guys are not going to be consistent at the bottom of this list. I just need a couple good weeks out of them for this to work out. At running back, I like that I got DeAndre Swift in the 3rd round. I do think there's some upside with DeAndre Swift. Myles Gaskin and Damian Harris, I got it at pretty good value of their cost, and they could both be their starting running backs for their respective offense. I went with the entire AFC East in this draft, which probably is not going to end up working out very well. But I'll get started on one more draft here. Overall, I like how it turned out. Not my usual approach. Usually I'm taking 3 running backs in the first. And it looks like this draft's about to start, which is great. I have the 6th overall pick in this draft. So it probably is going to turn out different than when I had the 7th overall pick. I'll probably go running back instead of Travis Kelce in the first round. And the running backs I'm hoping to be there at the 6th overall pick: Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara. If those 4 are gone, which they probably will be, I'll be excited about Ezekiel Elliott, and I will be excited about Saquon Barkley. So I'm probably going to go with one of these 6 players so that I can do my hyper-fragile running back approach with like 3, maybe 4 running backs, and then have a lot of wide receivers again on the squad. I hate Kittle in fantasy, only in real life. Yeah, George Kittle is the 2nd best tight end in the NFL on talent alone. It's honestly, I don't think you can really argue against that. But what you definitely can argue against is George Kittle not being better in fantasy than Darren Waller. Darren Waller was one of 2 tight ends last season with at least 5 targets in every game. The only other tight end that did that was Travis Kelce. Darren Waller was the 2nd most consistent in tight end in fantasy. Wasn't really close last season. And the Raiders didn't add any offensive weapons. They got John Brown, but they lost their number 1 wide receiver. So Darren Waller is absolutely safer than George Kittle. And the other thing with George Kittle is Trey Lance is not going to be good for George Kittle. If Trey Lance wins the starting quarterback job, which could easily happen in the first 5 weeks of the season, George Kittle is going to be on an extremely run-first offense. And we see these 4 running backs go. I'm doing a live draft on YouTube. If you want to join the live stream on YouTube, you can see a draft I'm doing live. I got the 6th overall pick, and I'm going to go with Ezekiel Elliott at 6th overall. I've been getting Zeke between 6 and 10 when I have these picks. I like Ezekiel Elliott a lot. I think that there was a lot of explanations for his bad year last year. He was playing through injuries. He had a very injured offensive line, and there was no Dak Prescott. In the first 4 weeks of the season, he was a top 3 running back. He also has the most touchdown upside in arguably the entire league. If Dak Prescott can go back to what he was before his injury, which was 350-plus yards a game through the air, Ezekiel Elliott could very easily lead the league in touchdowns, and he could lead the league in rushing as well. The offensive line isn't as good as it once was for Zeke, but it's still a good offensive line if they can stay healthy, and they are currently back fully healthy. So I'm in on Zeke at pick 6. I went 7th overall last draft, and I took Travis Kelce. Take a look at who the 7th overall pick was in this draft, so that makes me feel a little bit better about taking him 7th overall when you see someone else do it. Now, I'll switch to the draft mode here so we can look at the draft board. But again, I'm drafting live on YouTube if you want to come check it out. If you're watching live on TikTok, just look up WalterPicks. Should I pick Jacobs at 4.11? No. I think Josh Jacobs is going to be firmly on my do not draft list this season. They went out and got Kenyon Drake. They're very adamant that Josh Jacobs will not be involved in the passing game, and this just severely limits his upside. He could very well come off the field on 3rd downs this season. And I'm also not that bullish on the offense overall. I think the offense could end up being bottom 10 in points scored. So I don't love Josh Jacobs. I really don't love him. But he could easily also rush for 1,000 yards. Like that's the upside of Josh Jacobs. It's not like there's no upside there. He's definitely good. Am I crazy to think Mike Williams has a chance to be this year's Calvin Ridley on a lesser scale? I absolutely love how you worded that. I honestly might steal that because you're not crazy at all. Mike Williams has been one of my most drafted wide receivers in best ball leagues for this exact reason. Mike Williams was top 12 in the league in deep targets per game last season. He has Justin Herbert, who is one of the ascending young quarterbacks in the NFL, who put on a clinic last year setting NFL records in the touchdown column. Justin Herbert is an absolute beast. And Mike Williams no longer has Hunter Henry to compete with for targets either. He's like the very clear number 2 wide receiver in the offense. And Austin Eckler is going to continue to be involved, but he could have a lot of really good games. I'm in on Mike Williams having, it's not going to be a Calvin Ridley level season, but it could be a fraction of that, which would put him in the wide receiver 2 conversation at the end of the season, top 24. Definitely possible. Thoughts on Woods and Amari Cooper? Yeah, I think both of those guys are guys I'm definitely in on. I took Robert Woods in the last draft I did on this live stream, but I would definitely prefer Amari Cooper. Again, I'm very bullish on the Cowboys offense. I think they could be top 5 in the league in points scored. I think that Dak Prescott could average over 300 passing yards a game like he was doing before he was injured last season. And by the way, those games, I actually went back last week and I rewatched those first 4 games with Dak Prescott fully healthy just to get a feel for what that offense was like when he was healthy. And he played good defenses. I think one of the games was against the Seahawks. They were really bad at the time. But one of the games was against the Rams. I think the first game of the season, he still put up over 300 passing yards. And it almost looked effortlessly. So I'm in on Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper in the whole passing attack. I'm back on the clock here after taking Zeke first overall. And I'm going to go with Najee Harris with this pick. I have Ezekiel Elliott and Najee Harris, potentially two running backs that could get 300 carries this season. And I'm not very excited about the Steelers' offense. I have a lot of concerns. I think the main reason the Steelers struggled last season, and I honestly feel like most Steelers fans agree with me on this, is the offensive line and how bad that offensive line was at creating rushing lanes for James Conner, who also didn't do great, but he really was running behind a bottom 5 offensive line in the league. They did draft some offensive linemen. They did let their center leave to the Chargers as well. So there's some holes in that offensive line that I'm definitely concerned about. But Najee Harris was picked in the first round, and he could legitimately see over 300 carries and could very easily see 50-plus targets. He could get the Le'Veon Bell type of workload. For the same reasons we think Cam Akers could get the Todd Gurley level workload. I think Najee Harris is a similar type of guy, but on a worse offense, which is why Najee Harris is getting picked after Cam Akers. But in the second round, I'm liking the start here with my 2 running backs, and I'm about to be on the clock. If DeAndre Swift is available, I will draft him, and he is available. So I'm going to take him in back-to-back drafts. I'm trying to get him on more teams, and Darren Waller was already picked. Let's take a look at the squad. I started 3 straight running backs in this draft, much different than my last draft, but I like this approach because I no longer will need to draft a running back. I'm gonna only have these 3 running backs. This team will end up doing very, very well if just these 3 players work out for me. And I have 2 guys with a Week 7 bye. I almost never look at buys, by the way. I think it's the most ridiculous tiebreaker that there is out there. Everyone's tiebreaker is do you have a bye conflict? Don't worry about bye conflicts. Draft the best players. That is my philosophy. Even if I didn't draft another running back and I only had DeAndre Swift for 1 week, if Ezekiel Elliott, Najee Harris, and DeAndre Swift all work out and they all see 300-plus touches this season, this team could still very well be fine with just only having 1 running back in the slot for Week 7. But I'm probably still going to draft a 4th running back because I don't love having only 1 running back in Week 7. Which, again, though, I still think it's not a good tiebreaker to use. Maybe a little bit better in best ball, but definitely not in a season-long league. Let's go back to the draft view here. Do we stay away from Jags running backs? Yeah, I don't know if anyone else saw that report pretty recently. There's been whispers of James Robinson might lead that backfield in touches. James Robinson seems like the favorite now to lead the backfield in carries. It would be pretty surprising, actually, if Travis Etienne got more carries this season than James Robinson. But Travis Etienne's almost definitely going to get more targets than James Robinson, and this is actually an area James Robinson kind of excelled in last season. It's what made him a running back 1. He was getting volume, guys. He was getting 20 to 30 touches a game, including at least 5 targets in most games. This was what James Robinson was doing. He had the best undrafted rookie season of all time. And then the Jaguars go out, they draft Travis Etienne in the first round, who's training at wide receiver. He's going to be on the field on 3rd downs, and he could potentially steal red zone work away from James Robinson. And vice versa, James Robinson could potentially steal work from Travis Etienne. And so, yeah, I think you just stay away from them. And it's also an offense, the more and more I think about it, and take a look at the 12th pick here. They went 4 straight running backs. I don't love their running backs, though. Josh Jacobs and David Montgomery are 2 guys that I'm very, very iffy on. And I honestly haven't drafted them really at all in the about 120 drafts that I've done so far. Thoughts on Lamar for this year? I absolutely love Lamar Jackson. I can't. Every time Lamar Jackson's available in the 5th round, I'm doing it. The 5th and 6th rounds is, in a lot of drafts that I've done, he is still available. We're in the 4th round right now. I'm doing a live draft on YouTube if you want to come check it out. Just look up WalterPicks on YouTube. But I'm doing a live best ball draft, $25 draft, competing for $1 million prize, which I intend to win, by the way. And this is about my 120th of these. And Patrick Mahomes still hasn't been picked. It's the 4th round of a 12-person draft. No Patrick Mahomes yet. And this is, I feel like, not going to happen in your traditional season-long league with your friends. I feel like, picturing the leagues that I'm in with my friends, someone's going to pick Patrick Mahomes in the 2nd or 3rd round. I'd be pretty surprised if he went in the 4th round. But in these drafts, I'm consistently seeing Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen available in the 5th round. And I'm in on that. I'm in on all 3 of those guys in the 5th round. Lamar Jackson has fallen the most, though, in my drafts that I've done so far. And Patrick Mahomes just got picked right before me in the middle of the 4th round. I started this draft with 3 straight running backs. And I think I'm going to go with Robert Woods again. Julio Jones is still available, but Robert Woods, to me, is destined for a breakout season with the best quarterback he's ever played with. So I'm excited to see what Robert Woods can do. I'm pretty bullish on that offense as well with Cam Akers and Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, and I like Tyler Higbee a lot too. But I get my first wide receiver who has a really high floor, so I like that because he's my first wide receiver I've drafted. I'm going to draft a lot of wide receivers that have higher ceilings but really no floor. Rank Tyreek, D-Hop, and MT. Yeah, Tyreek's number 1. He should be number 1. He's tethered to the best quarterback in the league, and DeAndre Hopkins is like the very clear number 2 here. I think that there is no safer wide receiver in all of fantasy football than DeAndre Hopkins. I've been saying this, it feels like for like a month and a half now, and I don't think I'm going to back off this take because DeAndre Hopkins has had 3 straight 150-plus target seasons. No other wide receiver in the league has done that. He is transitioned to a new team with no offseason, and in the very first game put up almost 100 yards, had 10 targets. And he consistently, no matter where he is and who he's with, is getting volume in the passing game, which is a testament to how good DeAndre Hopkins is. It's also a good thing that Kyler Murray is his quarterback. So I'm in on there's no way DeAndre Hopkins busts. He's one of the few bust-proof players in my eyes. Without an injury, I can't see him busting. He's gonna be a top 10 wide receiver, especially in PPR leagues. And we see Lamar Jackson just got picked. Josh Allen and Kyler Murray still available, and I'm going to consider both of them here in the 5th round. The other benefit in these best ball leagues, and Josh Allen gets picked, and I love getting the last of this tier. I absolutely love when the last guy in this tier falls to me. I'm going to take Kyler Murray here. We saw Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes all already get picked. I'm in the middle of the 5th round, and Kyler Murray, who could easily end up as the number 1 quarterback, he averaged 27 points a game through a month stretch last season. He has improved offensive weapons. Rondale Moore is there now. A.J. Green, who looked terrible last season, but is at least a red zone target for him. And he has a lot of rushing upside. Kyler Murray is one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the league, who averaged a lot of fantasy points last season. And now I only need to draft 1 more quarterback, too. So I get to free up a roster spot for an additional running back or wide receiver. I have not drafted a tight end yet. And honestly, the worst part for me about drafting DeAndre Swift is it makes me less want to draft TJ Hawkinson, who I'm also very bullish on in fantasy, in PPR leagues specifically. I think that TJ Hawkinson could lead the Lions in targets. There's basically no receiver not named Travis Kelce or Darren Waller that could actually do that. Kyle Pitts definitely won't. George Kittle definitely won't. And maybe Mark Andrews, but probably not. TJ Hawkinson probably will lead his team in targets if he can just play an entire healthy season. He's going up against Brashad Perriman. Bold take. Akers will be number 3 running back this year. Definitely possible. Are you betting on Cam Akers to be a workhorse? Yes, I am. I'm definitely betting on that. If you take a look at, let's see if I have this here, the running backs I've drafted. Cam Akers received the 5th most running back drafted. If you're watching live on TikTok, I've drafted him in as many leagues really as I can, back into the 1st round or the beginning of the 2nd round. I'm pulling the trigger on Cam Akers very consistently. He literally has a Todd Gurley level season upside. That's his upside. That's insane upside. That is number 1 running back upside. I don't even think his upside's top 3. I think he could legit be the number 1 running back if the cards fall right for Cam Akers. And I think Najee Harris is my favorite 2nd round pick because he is going to see 300 plus carries this season if he can stay healthy and if the Steelers can stay in games. He has 300 plus carry upside. There's running backs going in the 1st round that will not get 300 carries, but Najee Harris could. I think that the offense is the biggest concern for Najee Harris. JT could be the number 1 running back as well. Yeah, Jonathan Taylor absolutely has a chance at it. He definitely has a chance. If he can get 20 plus touches a game, he won't surprise me at all if he ends up being the number 1 running back in fantasy. He could score multiple touchdowns and have 100 plus yards a game behind that offensive line if they just give him the ball consistently, which is the biggest concern. How involved will Marlon Mack be? How involved will Nyheim Hines be? Will they start him off as kind of a committee in the first half of the season, like they did last year, so that Jonathan Taylor can be healthy and fresh for the back half of the season? It's definitely possible they do that. And even if they do that, it's not the end of the world. Jonathan Taylor won fantasy leagues last year for anyone that had him in the playoffs. TJ Hawkinson gets picked. Kareem Hunt still available. I don't hate him as my fourth running back here because I do have this bye week issue. I'll probably take him if he's still there. From weeks 10 to 17, he was averaging 20 carries for 130 yards and 1.2 touchdowns. Yeah, that's absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. And the other crazy splits to look at, Kareem Hunt gets picked one pick before me. That's very annoying. Let's take a look at the wide receivers available. I don't hate Courtland Sutton. I also don't hate Devonta Smith. But I'm going to go with Courtland Sutton over him. I'm hoping Devonta Smith can slide one more round to me. He probably won't. I was getting Devonta Smith in the 7th round not that long ago. Almost every time he was there in the 7th round, I took him. But more and more, Devonta Smith getting picked in the 6th round of drafts, which is a little too early for me. Courtland Sutton is a much safer pick than Devonta Smith, but I do love the upside with Devonta Smith, and I will take him in the 7th round. He's one of my most drafted wide receivers. Yarj, my man. Yeah, I was absolutely knocked out. I was knocked out when I took the vaccine as well. I had the chills. It was brutal, but it was worth it. I'm definitely glad that I got it. And you will be too. It's just a relief of stress and anxiety once you can be around people again. It's been really nice. Thoughts on Cam Akers and Najee Harris? Yeah, I talked a little bit about them. Chubb Eckler is a good stack. Yeah, I like the Chubb Eckler stack as well. Let's take a look at the draft board again here. Nick Chubb is a very interesting player in fantasy because on one hand, Nick Chubb was the most efficient running back in the NFL last season. Nobody was evading tackles and picking up yards at a more efficient pace than Nick Chubb. It was absolutely insane. And Nick Chubb also led the league in terms of stacked boxes. Teams knew Nick Chubb was going to get the ball, and it did not matter. That's how insane Nick Chubb was. And the downside of Nick Chubb, obviously, is that Kareem Hunt is on the team, and Kareem Hunt will still be involved. He's going to be there on third downs. He's going to steal some touchdowns away from Nick Chubb. That being said, Nick Chubb could very easily have a 1,200-plus yard season and 10-plus touchdowns, and Kareem Hunt still be a running back 3. We've actually seen it before, and especially with the team of the Cleveland Browns want to run the ball. They are going to pound it with Nick Chubb when they do have leads. And they will have leads this season. I still think they're a playoff-level team. So Nick Chubb is pretty safe. But the upside to me is a little capped because of Kareem Hunt. And because he's not going to see 25-plus touches a game. He'll have a few games where the Browns destroy teams where he has 25-plus touches. But he will not average 25-plus touches. He's going to... Ideally, he ends up and Devonta Smith is here in the 7th round, so I got to be true to my word here. I'm going to pull the trigger on Devonta Smith. I'm very glad I went with Courtland Sutton in the last round, and I got Devonta Smith after his average draft position, which I'm happy to do at any time. Devonta Smith, guys, he landed in the perfect situation. He has no competition to be the primary wide receiver. He is going to lead the Eagles in receiving this season. He's paired up with Jalen Hurts, who he has a connection with. And he has one of the greatest player profiles we've seen from a rookie. He has insane speed, incredible hands, and pristine route running. The only knock on Devonta Smith is his size. You are probably as tall as Devonta Smith. Devonta Smith's like 5'9", 5'10". But he has all of the other attributes, guys. And he has, especially in a best ball format, to me, his upside is number 1 overall wide receiver weeks. Smith is going to have an insane amount of targets. Yeah, the targets, if he does have 7-plus targets a game, there's not a chance Devonta Smith doesn't outproduce his average draft position. And I don't even know if he's going to have 7-plus targets a game, but he will have some games with 7 targets. And that's enough for me. That's enough for me, because in those games, I believe the talent will rise to the occasion of Devonta Smith. Why he's my number 1 most drafted wide receiver, I think probably outside of Cordell Patterson at this point if I pull up this list. Devonta Smith, my most drafted wide receiver in this format. I have a list behind me right now on TikTok. I've drafted him in over a third of my drafts. I can't stop drafting him. In the 7th round, give me all of the Devonta Smith. And I probably won't do this, by the way, in season-long leagues. I don't know if Devonta Smith's as good of a target, but I still think there's a ton of upside there. And I will take Dallas Goedert with his next pick as well if he's there to get this stack with the Eagles, but also to get my first tight end. I do think there's a little bit of a teardrop of tight ends. I like Logan Thomas about as much as Dallas Goedert, and I'll look to get him too. If I can get Dallas Goedert and Logan Thomas, I could still only draft 2 tight ends, which would be pretty huge this late in the draft, because I also only need to draft 2 quarterbacks already, because I got Kyler Murray in this draft. And I did snag Dallas Goedert. So if I can get Logan Thomas, or if I can get... Looks like Tyler Higbee's actually already picked, which is early for him. But if I can get Logan Thomas, I'll convince myself to only draft 2 tight ends. Let's go back to the draft board here. CEH. Is it better to watch here or YouTube? I think YouTube's a little better because you can see the draft happening live on the YouTube screen that I'm doing right now. You can look at the draft board and the picks as they're happening. It's very interesting. We saw Tyler Higbee actually pick before Dallas Goedert. That is encouraging for me because I have Tyler Higbee as one of my most drafted tight ends. But I think it's a little early for Tyler Higbee. I think I would prefer Dallas Goedert. I think Goedert will end the season with more targets per game than Tyler Higbee, though Higbee probably does have a little bit more touchdown upside, which is why I've been drafting him as well. But I've been getting him more like in the 9th round. Antonio Brown, the receivers that go in the 9th, 8th, 7th round, there's a lot of value there. I think that Mike Williams is a really intriguing 8th round and 9th round pick in this format. I think Antonio Brown is also a very intriguing upside player. He actually led the team in air yards in the games that he played. In the games that Antonio Brown was playing of the full game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last season, it was about 6 or 7 games, he led the team in air yards per game. There was no one getting more valuable targets than him. And I will take Logan Thomas if he's here with this pick, so that I can just focus on quarterback, running back, wide receiver for the rest of this draft. Brandon Cooks, Jalen Waddle, and Michael Pittman are all pretty intriguing. And look, Aaron Rodgers, sitting around again in this draft. This is happening draft after draft after draft. His average draft position is definitely on the decline. It's definitely getting later and later and later. And I will take Logan Thomas. We saw 2 of those 3 wide receivers left. Look, Michael Pittman, hopefully I can get with my next pick. Probably won't, seeing who's left here. But I'm still going to go with Logan Thomas just because I think he's like very clearly the best tight end left. If we look at the tight ends left, Logan Thomas could be the number 2 option in that passing game still. And I'm pretty bullish on Ryan Fitzpatrick raising the points scoring in Washington. So I like Logan Thomas a lot. I think he's got a lot of upside. And he's like, to me, the last tight end you can actually trust to have any chance at like a weekly consistent role. But I'm not too worried about it because I also got Dallas Goedert, who I think will have a consistent weekly role. So these 2 guys are who I'm going to rock with at the tight end position. And I think they give me a chance to still finish top 3 in tight end scoring. And this is how I think about it. Like, where am I going to finish in terms of tight end scoring with my current roster? If there's a chance that I finish as top 3, let's just move on to the other positions and not waste picks on these guys who most of these tight ends left are going to be absolutely terrible and probably not used in a single week in the lineups that they select. Like, this is how bad these tight ends are. Most of them will bust. There'll be 1 or 2 guys on this list. Maybe Gerald Everett will have a couple good weeks. It definitely won't be consistent. Robert Tonyan definitely has actually pretty intriguing upside if Aaron Rodgers plays, which we're not sure is going to happen. So I've talked myself into him a few times late in drafts when this is left, but look how bad these tight ends are. Cole Kmet is a guy that I think has a little bit more upside than people realize. In the Bears offense, he could be their number 3 option. He kind of played more than Jimmy Graham in the back half of last season, and people weren't really talking about it. Adam Trautman also could be the number 2 receiving option after probably number 3 after Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara. That's within his range of outcomes, but what if Taysom Hill is starting? And we don't know if he really is going to secure an every down role. So he's not by any means a lock. Most of these guys are going to bust, so which is why I'm happy I'm done drafting tight ends, because now when other teams are going to be drafting these guys who aren't going to help them very much, well, I get to draft wide receivers that have legitimate upside. I just need them to do well a few weeks, and I can mix and match their good few weeks. This is best ball. I do not make start-sit decisions. My best lineups automatically submitted for me at the end of each week. You can do these on Underdog, by the way. If you haven't done any best ball drafts on Underdog, they're actually running a promotion right now. If you deposit for the first time, they'll give you $25 free. Deposit $25, they'll give you $25 free. You got $50 to play with and to do some drafts. They're a lot of fun. And if you go back to the previous YouTube streams, or even earlier in this stream, I'm talking through a lot of best ball strategies. So definitely stay tuned for more of how I'm approaching these drafts. I've done about 120 of these drafts. Why are you named WalterPicks? Oh, and great question. The reason we're named WalterPicks is because Walter is the AI algorithm that we have built that dominates fantasy sports for us. It projects NFL players, NBA players, MLB and NHL players coming very soon, and it helps us dominate fantasy sports. And so we are trusting Walter's projections. That's why we're called WalterPicks. It powers the WalterPicks app, which is in the iOS App Store. And I've spent thousands of hours working on this app, so I do appreciate you checking it out. Taking a look at who's left here, Russell Gage and Darnell Mooney both just got picked. I'm going to go with Jalen Reagor and finish off this Eagles stack because I already got Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert. I don't love how few wide receivers I have right now. I'm going to need another quarterback too, but I'm going to be picking wide receivers for basically the rest of the draft. So hopefully it works out. I'll definitely take Justin Fields if he's there with my next pick. Trey Lance as well. Two guys that I'll definitely consider as my last quarterbacks. I think they have insane upside. Both of them have a very, very high rushing ceiling. And they're both clearly better than the starting quarterback for their respective teams. But I think Justin Fields actually has a chance to start before Andy Dalton, despite what the coaches are saying. Because Trey Lance, to me, he definitely has a chance, and we see Trey Lance get picked right here at the back end of the 10th round. But Trey Lance, his coaches seem right now more willing to start him week 1 than the Chicago Bears coaches. The Chicago Bears coaches are sticking to the tune of Andy Dalton's our starting quarterback. He's going to start week 1. This is not going to be any news story throughout the offseason. But Justin Fields is way better than Andy Dalton, and I think that's going to become very, very clear to them in training camp. And I don't think they want Justin Fields starting week 1 against the Rams. I think in LA, that's not a good game to be starting in the NFL against one of the best defenses in the league. So I think that he won't play week 1, but I won't be surprised at all if Justin Fields plays week 2. I think that's the earliest I see Justin Fields starting. Trey Lance could start. Trey Lance also could start week 1, but Jimmy Garoppolo isn't that bad. Jimmy Garoppolo, we've seen have success in this exact offense, so it won't shock me at all if they let him play and let Trey Lance develop a little bit longer. I think there's kind of a skew right now that people think Trey Lance is going to start earlier, because of what the coaches are saying, but I think the situation's got to be considered. Thoughts on Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love stack? Yeah, it's not terrible. It's because you can get Jordan Love with your last pick, right? So you're really not spending that much, but the upside, especially if I'm doing a tournament, the upside for you is Aaron Rodgers, right? Jordan Love has no upside. Jordan Love isn't good. Jordan Love will struggle in the NFL, and I don't think he's a lock to actually play an entire season as the starter. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Blake Bortles is better than Jordan Love. It would not surprise me at all. There's nothing I've seen that makes me very excited about Jordan Love. No one has raved about him in training camp. No one thought he had a particularly great college profile. He had a good college profile. So I'm not that excited about him. And I think that we're going to see that Aaron Rodgers was actually playing with a lot less than it seemed. He has Devonta Adams and Aaron Jones. Robert Tonyan is probably like a mid-level tight end in terms of talent across the league. And after that, you have Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Allen Lazard and Amari Rodgers. I don't think he has the best weapons. So I think Jordan Love could really, really struggle. But if Aaron Rodgers does play, then there's a lot of upside there. So just draft Aaron Rodgers if you think that there's some upside. I don't love the stack of two quarterbacks on the same team. Zeke and Chubb, a good duo for this year. Yeah, definitely a very good duo. I think Zeke could easily lead the league in touchdowns. Is Watson even worth a bench spot? No, Max, he's not. Deshaun Watson is not worth a bench spot. Deshaun Watson probably will not play a snap in the NFL this season. I'd say there's a better chance that Deshaun Watson doesn't play than that he does. And this is, totally me guessing. So don't take any this isn't a real news report or anything. But I do think that, to me, it seems very unlikely we see him play. So based on just the finds I've seen in the past. So I got my two quarterbacks. I got my two tight ends. I only have three running backs, but I'm going to go wide receiver here. I'll snag Henry Ruggs. I think there's some upside with Henry Ruggs. I'm not expecting that much. And this wide receiver group's honestly looking very, very volatile so far, which is okay as long as I end up drafting a lot of wide receivers. But Henry Ruggs has at least some upside. He was a top 10 pick in the draft. He still is only competing with really John Brown and Darren Waller for targets. So there is some sort of target upside there. They're going to want to be a run-first team, but he is really fast too. And we saw one good game out of him last season. He's going to need a couple more than that for this to work out for me, but I also got him 12 picks after his average draft position, which isn't terrible. You think Pitts is capable of being top 3 this year? Yeah, he 100% is capable of that. I would be surprised if he finished higher than that, which is kind of the biggest reason that it's tough to draft Kyle Pitts as the fourth tight end, which is what he's being drafted as right now. We're seeing Travis Kelce go in the first round. We're seeing Darren Waller go in the second round, actually pretty consistently now. And George Kittle's going at the back end of the second round or the beginning of the third round. Kyle Pitts has been getting drafted in the fourth round as the fourth tight end. And it's hard to envision him doing better than Darren Waller or Travis Kelce. And if George Kittle, I think he could be more inconsistent than we're used to with Trey Lance at quarterback. So he could be the number 3 tight end, which is very valuable, by the way. He definitely will give you value. To me, he's the number 2 wide receiver on the Falcons. He's basically a wide receiver. He's going to be used as a wide receiver. So there's definitely upside with Kyle Pitts, absolutely. And which is why I have been drafting him as the 4th tight end. But I like to get him more in the back end of the 4th. He's going like early 4th round in a lot of drafts we've done so far. In the draft I'm doing right now, Kyle Pitts went in the middle of the 4th round, the 5th pick of the 4th round. So that's pretty consistent with what I've seen. Let's check out the wide receivers still available. I'm in on Rondale Moore because I got Kyler Murray. So I will take him if he's there. It looks like he's the next in terms of average draft position too, which I love to see. So let's snag Rondale Moore, who's not going to be consistent. Rondale Moore definitely will not be consistent in fantasy. DeAndre Hopkins is there. There's Christian Kirk still there. They went out and signed A.J. Green. But Rondale Moore, I think there will be games where he touches the ball at least 5 times. And Rondale Moore is insanely athletic. He has insane speed, 99th percentile speed. He is dynamic with the ball in his hands. And I think there's going to be games where the Arizona Cardinals get him touches. And I also got Kyler Murray in this draft already, so I don't hate the stack. And I think he's one of the most athletic rookies in this class. And if you can tell the guys I'm drafting, all of them, the last 4 are just like very, very speedy wide receivers, which I honestly, targets is really what I want, and it's what's going to lead to this team being successful, but I'm not going to complain about speed. Definitely not. I think all of these guys have the capability to have 80-yard games on just 2 catches. What is this? This is my most drafted wide receivers behind me. I've done about 120 fantasy football drafts. These are the guys I've drafted the most so far. You got to keep in mind, this has to do with cost as well, right? Michael Thomas is usually I'm drafting in the first 2 rounds. I'm taking running backs. Michael Thomas, every single time he's there in the 3rd round, I'm taking him, which happens about 25% of the drafts that I've done. Quintez Cephas, Elijah Moore, Cordero Patterson, all going after round like 14, so very, very late. Cordero Patterson is my most drafted last round pick. Devonta Smith, every single time Devonta Smith is available in the 7th round, I'm drafting him. I did this in the draft that I'm sharing live right now on YouTube. If you come to YouTube, I'm sharing my live draft. I have drafted Devonta Smith, Jalen Reagor, and Dallas Goedert all on the same team. Despite Jalen Hurts' struggles with a 52% completion percentage last year, I still believe he can be good in the NFL. And I think that his rushing is only going to help the offense. Around what round does Kittle become a must draft? Too far him to fall. I think end of the 3rd round. End of the 3rd round is when you really, you kind of have to be taking George Kittle because he's almost always going in the beginning of the 3rd round. But I still don't love, I don't love George Kittle in fantasy. I think he has a lot of risk with Trey Lance as the starting quarterback. And we don't know how soon that's going to happen, but it will happen. It could happen next season, but it's probably going to happen this year. I'd say greater than 70% chance Trey Lance plays by week 7. So that's not going to be good for George Kittle. They're going to be an extremely run-first offense. And I think Trey Lance is a very exciting fantasy football player, which is why he's going in about the 10th round, even though he might not be starting week 1. His rushing upside is going to be astronomical. And I'm about to be back on the clock here. Give me some sleeper tight ends, 4th/5th round snags. Well, in the drafts that I've done, Kyle Pitts is available in the 4th round. So that's definitely who you should be taking if you're getting drafted. If you're drafting in the 4th round. In the 5th round, you're looking at T.J. Hawkinson, who could lead the Lions in targets. So I think Pitts in the 4th round or Hawkinson in the 5th are pretty good values. I'm going to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown with this pick here. I got Jamison Elite Crowder in my last draft. I got to mix it up a little. And the Lions are a team that you can really, you can stack them really, really late in drafts. Brashad Perriman wasn't even picked that long ago. Probably just 1 round Yeah, right after I picked Rondell Moore. So I could have gotten all of the Detroit Lions wide receivers on the same team if I wanted to. Kittle or Waller. In fantasy, it's Waller. In real life, it's definitely George Kittle. So if you're asking about fantasy football, draft Darren Waller before George Kittle. If you're asking about who I'd rather have on my NFL team, it's definitely George Kittle. I think he's pretty clearly the second best tight end in the league. Thoughts on Tariq Cohen? Yes, I'm super excited to see Tariq Cohen back on an NFL field. He's absolutely electric with the ball in his hands. I'm extremely big fan of all of the small running backs because I was a shorter athlete, so they are always athletes that I looked up to. So I'm excited to watch Tariq Cohen ball out again. I'm not very excited about him from a fantasy football perspective. I don't think he's going to be very reliable behind David Montgomery, and they signed Damian Williams this offseason too, who could take some of that receiving workload as well. So from a fantasy perspective, not that excited about him. From an actual life perspective, though, I'm very excited to see him back healthy and balling out for the Bears. You think Galladay will produce in fantasy? I don't love Kenny Galladay, but the more I think about it, the more reasonable his price seems. If we look at where Kenny Galladay was picked in this draft I'm doing live on YouTube, Kenny Galladay went in the last pick of the 5th round or 6th round. So you're getting him in the 6th or 5th round of your fantasy draft, which, if you think about it, he could be your wide receiver 2 or 3 at that point. And I don't hate that. I think he's going to see targets, guys. They didn't go out and give him this huge contract to not give him at least 8 targets a game. And Kenny Galladay is a guy that can take down passes in any way or shape or form that they're given to him. So I think Kenny Galladay could easily end up returning value at his current price. I've been starting to draft him more and more as his ADP has fallen. Jameson Lee Crowder continuing to be disrespected. I'm going to take Tyrell Williams here. I already drafted Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm now drafting Tyrell Williams. I'll also consider drafting Quintez Cephas, who all of these guys could easily end up being the number 1, 2, or 3 wide receiver on this team. And all 3 of them, for that reason, are values at this current price, especially if I can draft all 3 of them. I'm basically guaranteeing I have the number 1, 2, or 3, 2 of those spots on my team. And I think that the Lions are going to have to throw the ball at some points this season. So I'm in on the Detroit Lions stack in the last 3 rounds of the draft. Is Debo too risky with Lance and behind Kittle and Ayuk, or is he a sleeper with injury risks? Max, I think that he is risky for the same reason George Kittle is risky. Trey Lance is going to be a very, very run-first offense. Debo Samuel will have some fantastic weeks. He's one of the best after-the-catch receivers in the league, as is Brandon Ayuka, the Bazooka, who I think is a sleeper in fantasy, but also has similar risks. Again, Trey Lance could turn this offense into a Lamar Jackson level of offense where they're running so much that it's so hard to sustain fantasy football relevant receivers. It's definitely possible. So I think there's definite concern there. And I do think Trey Lance is going to start at some point this season. What do you think of Cam Akers, Martin? I'm very, very high on Cam Akers. I'm a big fan of his. I think that he has Todd Gurley level upside. I think that is the upside for Cam Akers this season, which is why he's definitely a guy I'm in on in the first round. Same thing with Austin Eckler. Someone just asked Joe Martin, Cam Akers or Austin Eckler? I would prefer Cam Akers slightly. I think that they're both very, very similar for me. I think both of them have very, very high upside. And in a PPR league, I could definitely talk myself into Austin Eckler over Cam Akers because the receiving upside is just astronomical for Austin Eckler with Justin Herbert and a much improved offensive line. He also has very little competition for targets, but Cam Akers has actual Todd Gurley level upside, which is, to me, the touchdown upside that Austin Eckler doesn't quite have. So I would prefer Cam Akers. But I like Austin Eckler a lot, and I'm willing to take both of them after pick 9 overall in the first round. Thoughts on Mike Davis? Yeah, Mike Davis is in a pretty good spot in terms of opportunity. He's going to be the clear running back 1 for an offense that's going to pass the ball a ton. I don't think he's going to do very well rushing, but he is a guy that could end up getting 5+ targets a game, which will make him really valuable in fantasy. I'm going to go Quintez Cephas here, even though it's before his ADP, just to lock in this Detroit Lions stack that I was going for. I now have drafted 9 wide receivers. I have an Eagles stack. I have a Detroit Lions stack. I also have Kyler Murray with Rondell Moore, which I don't hate. if we look at the running backs left, by the way, the guys that I'm interested in with like my last picks, Darrell Williams, the number 2 running back for the best offense in the league. You can get him in round 17 or 18 of these drafts. He's an injury away from being a running back 2, tethered to the best offense in the league. He's going to score touchdowns. And he also could be involved even without an injury to Clyde. He could get the goal line role. Clyde Edwards-Helaire struggled inside the 5 last season. They gave him like 10 carries, 5 to 10 carries inside the 5. He didn't score almost any of them outside of like week 1 of the NFL season. So Darrell Williams to me is an interesting like last round running back to take. I'm going to need to take a 4th running back here because I have 2 week 7 bye running backs. If you're watching live on TikTok, by the way, I'm doing a live draft on YouTube. You can come check out the YouTube. Hit that like button, by the way, if you're watching on YouTube. It does help me out a ton. It takes you like 3 seconds. Helps me out way more than you realize. Thoughts on Deebo Samuel? Yeah, I lost $1,000. Oh, nay. Today is you day. You got to trust the process, man. There's going to be streaks. I'm sorry to hear that you lost some money. It happens to the best of us. And Walter's NBA player prop picks definitely cooled off at the end of the NBA season. We were shooting almost 61% for most of the season, where the NBA prop picks, we made almost 200 of them, is sitting right around 55% right now. So still not bad. Definitely positive ROI on the season. I'm going to take Darrell Williams here as my 4th running back and look to take Cordero Patterson with my last pick. But it still, net was a successful NFL season. And the pick started extremely hot at the beginning of the season, which we saw that happen in the NFL as well, actually, which is interesting. To me, it shows kind of that the odds makers are getting slightly better throughout the season as they get more data on the players. But we definitely had a successful first NFL and NBA season. Thoughts on Adams? Yeah, Devontae Adams to me is still going to be a top 5 wide receiver without Aaron Rodgers, but he's not going to be the number 1 overall wide receiver without Aaron Rodgers. So I'm not willing to take him in the first round. I drafted him in the second round in the previous draft I did right before this. But I think that if without Aaron Rodgers, like the ceiling and the floor is just lowered so much that it's going to be tough to trust him. And we're about halfway through this live stream. Probably going to be doing 1 or 2 more drafts. I'm trying to hit the 3-hour mark as I'm building up my stamina, guys. I'm building up my stamina for the next few months of live streaming. Going to have a lot more content coming at you very, very soon. Dylan, how's it going? Good to see you here, man. We are getting one day closer, one day at a time, closer to the NFL season. I am getting more and more excited as we get closer and closer to the NFL season. Philly is going to want to get young talent involved. Yeah, Devonta Smith is going to have an insane amount of targets, guys. Is Mixon a safe pick? Late second round. He's injury prone, but real good. Yeah, everyone is injury prone, though. This is the thing. Don't pretend like you know who's going to get injured. Running backs have an extremely high probability of injuries, Joe Mixon included. But I'm not going to let that stop me from drafting Joe Mixon in the back end of the second round, when he could be on the field for 90% of the snaps in a offense that could take a huge leap this season. Joe Burrow could ascend this offense to top 10 in passing yards. It's very possible that they hit that. And if they do, Joe Mixon's going to score a lot of touchdowns. Thoughts for pick 2 if CMC goes at 1? Yeah, I'd go Dalvin Cook. Personally, at this point in time, about 3 weeks ago, I was picking Saquon Barkley second overall. That's already been a mistake of mine. I already adjusted. You're going to realize if you follow me for long enough, I'm constantly changing and adjusting what I think about fantasy football. And I think if you don't do that, you are not adapting to new information as it comes, as you should. But I do think that second overall pick at this point, I would take Dalvin Cook. And third, it would be Derrick Henry. In a standard league, I think you can strongly consider Derrick Henry over Dalvin Cook. PPR league, though, I'm definitely going Dalvin Cook. And then again, PPR league, I'm going Alvin Kamara fourth. Alvin Kamara could be number 2 on the Saints in receiving yards. We saw him basically operate as a wide receiver 1 when Michael Thomas was out last season. He was literally averaging 70 yards a game as a receiver. So I do think Alvin Kamara has that workload that we want in a top 5 pick. After those first 4 picks, though, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, then it really gets interesting because do you want to draft Saquon Barkley, a guy that might not be playing week 1 with the 5th overall pick? And I would be understanding of doing it, especially in a season-long league. But you got to be prepared to not have your first-round pick week 1, which is not something that you're going to like very much when it happens. But I still think I would take Saquon 5th overall. Next would be Ezekiel Elliott for me. And a lot of people are drafting Jonathan Taylor before Saquon and Zeke. I would take Saquon and Zeke before Jonathan Taylor. I think Jonathan Taylor is the riskiest first-round pick. I definitely see the upside there. And if he gets 20-plus touches a game, he's going to finish as a top 5 back behind one of the best offensive lines in the league, an improved quarterback. There's a lot going for Jonathan Taylor, but he might be similar to last season, where they split a lot of the work in the first half of the season. Marlon Mack is involved. We see Nyheim Hines involved. This draft ended pretty well. We finished with Kyler Murray and Justin Fields at quarterback. Ezekiel Elliott, Najee Harris, DeAndre Swift, and Darrell Williams, my 4 running backs. Robert Woods, Cortland Sutton, Devontae Smith, Jalen Reagor. I got that Eagle stack with Dallas Goedert as well. And then I got Henry Ruggs, Rondale Moore, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Hopefully 2 out of those 3 guys can return value for me at their cost. Look, I drafted a lot of Week 9 bye weeks here with the Detroit Lions, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tyrell Williams, Quintez Cephas. And, of course, ending the draft with Cordell Patterson. And my second tight end here was Logan Thomas. I think that this team could finish top 3 in tight end scoring, top 5 in wide receiver scoring, top 5 in running back scoring, and top 5 in quarterback scoring with this roster construction, which is what gives me a chance at the $1 million prize. All right, let's run it back. We're about an hour and a half into the stream. I got about an hour and a half to go. Going to be on the stream for about 3 total hours getting ready for the NFL season and getting back into the swing of the live streams. Austin Eckler is my running back 1 dark horse pick because of his receiving potential. There's not that big of a difference between Austin Eckler and between Alvin Kamara. There's not that big of a difference. And honestly, the Chargers offense could overall be better than the Saints offense. Austin Eckler has similar receiving upside as Alvin Kamara. He has a better offensive line. There is an argument to be made that Austin Eckler should be drafted before Alvin Kamara, who's the pretty much consensus top 5 pick. So, yeah, I'm with you. I'm with the bold take on Austin Eckler. It won't surprise me at all. Someone's asking about Mac and Cheese Mac Jones. I think Mac Jones is going to be one of the most exciting storylines for me personally to watch as a Pats fan, but also one of the more honestly intriguing stories just across the NFL as an NFL fan. How long will Cam Newton hold off Mac and Cheese? Because Mac and Cheese is the very clear future for the New England Patriots. Cam Newton very clearly struggling to throw the ball, and this isn't going to change. Cam Newton is going to struggle as a passer. There's already been reports about it in just minicamp. That's already happened. Cam Newton is not the answer for the Patriots if they want to make the playoffs and if they want to have a legit chance at making a run at all. But what is giving some hope to the Patriots is their offensive line. The Patriots could have a top 3 offensive line in the league, and if they do, Cam Newton still can be successful. His rushing will be very, very good, and I think Damian Harris will also be a very, very good fantasy pick in the 7th and 8th rounds. Is Austin Eckler and Nick Chubb a good duo with Mike Evans at flex in a 12-man league? Yeah, I think that's a fantastic duo. I don't love Mike Evans. I mean, Mike Evans at flex is pretty solid. I don't know who your other 2 wide receivers are, but yeah, I like those 2 running backs, Austin Eckler and Nick Chubb. And I'm going to be doing another live draft on YouTube coming up once 2 more people join. I've done a couple of these already. Probably have time for 2 more, which is going to be fun. I absolutely love doing these, guys. This is one of my favorite things to do. I love being on these live streams with you guys. I appreciate you tuning in. This is a lot of fun for me. I look forward to this all week, and I'm excited. The NFL season is getting closer. Before we know it, guys, like 40 days, we're going to have NFL on our TV screens. Preseason is going to be going on as normal this season, which is really, really exciting. It was not a normal NFL season last year. I'm excited to hopefully go to some games this year as well after a year of no attending NFL games. As we're waiting, we got 2. I'm waiting on 2 picks here. 2 people to join. Is there any questions that I can get to in the chat? Fantasy football related, NFL related, life related, as I wait for 2 more people to join this draft. Is Kamara worth the top 5 pick? Yeah, he is. Definitely in a PPR league. I'm taking Alvin Kamara with the 4th overall pick. Thoughts on Steelers wide receiver core? Yeah, Max, I think that Deontay Johnson was the pretty clear wide receiver 1 for the offense. I thought that report about Juju playing more on the outside was very interesting. I thought that was very interesting because who's going to play on the inside then? Because Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool are very good receivers that don't play very much in the slot role. Juju's role was really like the dirty work of the offense. He was catching short, intermediate, dangerous passes over the middle and not getting very many yards after the catch. He's very reliable. I think he's an underrated receiver in the NFL at this point. he still had one of the best age-adjusted seasons in the history of the NFL. But I think Deontay Johnson's going to be the number 1 receiver in the offense. I think Juju is probably going to be the number 2, and Chase Claypool is going to play that deep role again and have a lot of touchdown upside, but might not be as consistent as those other 2 guys. I like Deontay Johnson a lot, though. I think he's an absolute baller. I get the 8th overall pick in this draft. I've now had the 7th overall pick in the first draft I did. I had the 6th overall pick in the last one. Now I'm getting the 8. We're playing with the middle rounds here, which is fun. I like to be able to react to the draft in the middle. Michael Pittman can break out this year, in my opinion. Yeah, I 100% agree. If we look at my most drafted wide receivers, Michael Pittman is on that list. He's absolutely on that list. Someone asked, how do you feel about A.J. Brown after the Julio Jones trade? I still like A.J. Brown a lot. I think A.J. Brown still should be drafted in by the early 3rd round. I think that's the type of upside A.J. Brown has. But the Julio Jones signing definitely lowers some of his target upside. A big part of the reason he was being drafted so early before the Julio Jones trade, he was being drafted like mid-second round as a top 5 wide receiver, is because there was no one to compete with for targets. Corey Davis was gone. Jonnu Smith was gone. They brought in basically nobody, just Josh Reynolds. So A.J. Brown had like 150-plus targets in his range of outcomes, which is probably unlikely at this point. It's probably going to be closer to 100 to 120 targets. But even with just that, A.J. Brown can absolutely ball out. So I'm not that worried about A.J. Brown. He's still going to be a wide receiver 1 in fantasy. And Julio Jones is also going to have wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1 weeks, but he's not going to be as consistent because it's still a run-first team. What app are you drafting on? Good question. This is the Underdog app. It's called Underdog Fantasy. We actually just started a partnership with them, so if you do deposit for the first time on Underdog, use code WALTER. Really does help us out a ton. I do appreciate that. And if you are trying it out, if you have not deposited on Underdog before, right now they're actually running a promotion. If you use code WALTER and you deposit $25 on Underdog, they will give you free $25. You'll have $50 to test out the platform and to try out some drafts on your own. You can play for as little as $3 in a draft. It's a lot of fun. There's drafts available very consistently. And the best ball format, it's all about roster construction, so it's a lot of fun. This draft that I'm doing right now is $25. It does cost money to play in any contest on the app. These are not free leagues. Do you think Terry McLaurin's production will be similar to last year? Yeah, I think last year, honestly, is Terry McLaurin's floor. I feel like that's Terry McLaurin's floor. I have the 8th pick, and I'm going to take Zeke. I got Zeke with the 6th pick last time, with Tyreek Hill and Stephon Diggs going early in this draft. I'm getting Zeke at the 8th pick. Travis Kelce was still available too, but I think I'd prefer Zeke. I got Kelce in one draft already that I've done. Who is your favorite early round running back? My favorite early round running back is starting to become Ezekiel Elliott, Austin Eckler, or Cam Akers. I think Austin Eckler or Cam Akers is probably it. You're going to get them. They still haven't been taken. It's the 11th and 12th pick right now. So you can really get some solid teams. If you can get both Austin Eckler and Cam Akers on the same team, Jonathan Taylor's probably going to get picked here, which will... this person took Cam Akers over Jonathan Taylor. Let's take a look at this. I'll go to the draft board. Take a look at this first round. We saw Dalvin Cook go first overall. We saw Christian McCaffrey go second overall. This is a big mistake by this person. Christian McCaffrey should be the first overall pick in every single draft. I don't think I can be convinced otherwise. Then we see Alvin Kamara go third overall, then Derrick Henry. Tyreek Hill went 5th overall, which you don't see very much. Then Saquon, then Stephon Diggs went 7th overall. We also don't see that very much. I got Zeke at 8th overall, and I'm about to be back on the clock. And this guy, look, at the 11th pick, he stacked Cam Akers with Austin Eckler. There's not going to be a better running back duo in this league than those two guys. Absolutely fire. I've done it on a few teams as well, and I'm very optimistic about those squads. I'm going to take Joe Mixon if he's there, and if he's not, I'm probably going to go with DeAndre Hopkins, and Joe Mixon is here, so I'm going to draft Joe Mixon. I now have Ezekiel Elliott and Joe Mixon, two running backs that a lot of people aren't going to like very much this season because they underperformed last season. But these are still two young quarterbacks in should be much better offenses than they were last year. Both have receiving upside and both have a lot of touchdown upside. And they both will be on the field for a lot of their team's plays. I miss you so much. Go Dolphins. Josh, miss you too. But I did a little segment, Josh, about the wide receiver situation in Miami. I know we were talking about it earlier, but I think that Devontae Parker is going to be the wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 on the offense. Jalen Waddle, to me, is going to command the wide receiver 1 role right away, and Will Fuller is going to be involved as well. And it won't shock me if we see Preston Williams still out there in some 4 wide receiver sets too. So I think that Gesicki will also continue to be involved. And, of course, Myles Gaskin is going to get the rock 10 to 15 times a game. And I think it's going to be a pretty evenly distributed offense. It won't be surprising at all to me if Devontae Parker has some big weeks still. I got offered Josh Allen, Dwayne Gaskins, and Mark Andrews for Herbert, Kupp, and Waller. Herbert, Kupp, and Waller is probably the better side of that trade. I would prefer Waller over Andrews. And Herbert is younger than Josh Allen. I'd still prefer Josh Allen over Herbert, but I don't know who Dwayne Gaskins is, so I don't know. Maybe that would change my opinion. Michael Thomas goes in the 2nd round here. He's been going in the 3rd round in a lot of drafts. Antonio Gibson goes in the back of the 2nd round. If you're watching live on TikTok, by the way, we are live on YouTube sharing a live draft that I'm doing right now. Clyde Edwards-Helaire going in the back of the 2nd round. That team's looking good as well. Christian McCaffrey and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You drafted Gesicki on a league. Nice. Did you already do a draft, Josh? Cook or Henry non-PPR? In a non-PPR league, I think I would prefer Derrick Henry. In a non-PPR league, I think Derrick Henry has to be your 2nd-ranked overall running back. He's going to get 25 carries a game in an improved offense that can't stack boxes. You can't stack boxes against Julio Jones and A.J. Brown. It just will not go well for you. I think Derrick Henry has the highest touchdown upside in the entire NFL. So I do think that in a standard league where you're not rewarded for catching the ball at all, Derrick Henry is the number 2 running back. I would go with him over Dalvin Cook and over Alvin Kamara. In a PPR league, though, I would go with Dalvin Cook, then Derrick Henry, then Alvin Kamara. And I think you could make the argument for Kamara over Derrick Henry in a PPR league. Henry's not going to be very involved in the passing game. I'm about to be back on the clock here. And if we look at the running backs available, DeAndre Swift has been taken. Darren Waller has been taken. I'm going to go with Allen Robinson here. I don't want Amari Cooper on this team because I already drafted Zeke. And I really do like Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb both a lot in this territory, but I drafted Allen Robinson instead because I don't like having Zeke and one of the receivers on the same team, even though they both are probably going to do very well. Allen Robinson at least differentiates me a little bit more from one team. So through the first 3 rounds now, let's take a look at the draft board again. I've now drafted Ezekiel Elliott, Joe Mixon, and Allen Robinson. Again, we are live on YouTube and TikTok right now. I'm getting ready, guys. This is my preseason. I'm getting ready for the NFL season. I'm going to be live for another hour or so. Probably we'll do one more draft live after this. I appreciate everyone that's tuned in. Seriously, this is my favorite thing, one of my favorite things to do. I absolutely love coming on the live stream, getting some drafts in, getting prepared for this fantasy season. I consider this my batting practice. This is my batting practice. I've done about 100 of these drafts so far. I'm going to do probably about 100 more as we get closer and closer to the season. And I'm going to be maxing out in this tournament the Best Ball Mania 2 on Underdog. Let's see, get back to some of your questions here. In your opinion, I see someone asking me to rate your 8-man auction league team. I'll do that in a second. In your opinion, who is going to be a top 10 pick in most leagues this year, but will end up being a bust? I think the number 1 likely player, the 2 most likely players are Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley. I'd say those are probably the 2 most likely bust players. Most of the other players in the first round to me are very, very safe picks outside of injuries. But I think Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley, how long until Saquon Barkley is seeing his full workload? He could be a bust just because of that. And I think Jonathan Taylor could end up being a bust because in the first half of the season, I won't be surprised if Marlon Mack and Nyheim Hines are very, very involved still. And we're in the 4th round. I'm going to be going with another receiver here. I think I'm going to go with Chris Godwin. Kyle Pitts is not available. Oh, he is still available. I'm going to go with Kyle Pitts instead. Take a look at where these tight ends were taken. George Kittle was taken in the beginning of the 3rd round. Darren Waller, end of the 2nd. I'm getting Kyle Pitts middle of the 4th round. And his average draft position just continues to rise. He's basically going to be, Kyle Pitts is going to be the number 2 at Kev Turry. How's it going? Jets over under 6 wins. Kev, listen, I think that the New York Jets, honestly the entire AFC East, but specifically the New York Jets, I think are one of the most underrated teams in the NFL. Listen, they are going to benefit massively from the Adam Gase effect, Kev. The Adam Gase effect has been around. It's been well documented. Adam Gase has every team that he has left has been much, much better after him leaving. Because when you are in close proximity to Adam Gase, you cannot be successful on a football field. He's that bad of a coach. And so when he leaves, and a lot of people don't realize just how much of the Jets' terribleness over the last year and a half was Adam Gase. They had a very, very untalented roster and a lot of injuries too. But now they have Zach Wilson, who could be good. They have one of the most underrated, in my opinion, wide receiver groups. I think Elijah Moore is going to be very, very good in the NFL. I think Denzel Mims is still a little underrated. Jameson Elite Crowder is still very much elite. And Corey Davis was actually very underrated last season. He had his most consistent season that he's ever had in the league in a run-first offense. So I think that it's an underrated team. They're probably still a year away from being legit playoff contenders. But to answer your question, Kev, I think I would go over 6 wins for the New York Giants. And you're talking to someone who put the house on Jets under 5.5 wins last season, which was an absolute lock with Adam Gase there. I think they ended up with 1 or 2 wins. But I think that they're going to go over 6 this season, Kevin. It won't surprise me if one of those comes against the Patriots, honestly. Jets' record will be 6-11. I will not be surprised at all if the Jets end up with exactly 6 wins. They're going to be in a 6 to 7 win column. And we're seeing Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen get picked at the back end of the 4th round earlier than usual. We'll see if there's a quarterback left for me. Kyler Murray, when I get up in the 5th round here. Julio Jones going late 5th round now, which is very interesting. He was going earlier than that when he was on the Falcons. Swift or Akers? I would lean towards Cam Akers. Cam Akers has Todd Gurley level upside. But you see DeAndre Swift behind me here on TikTok. I'm starting to talk myself into DeAndre Swift in the 3rd round. I was fading DeAndre Swift in the 2nd round, in the beginning of the 3rd round, but he's now available in the middle of the 3rd round, and I think he's now getting priced in a way that his upside exceeds his cost. He is on a team that he could be number 2 in targets. He could legitimately be number 2 in targets for the Detroit Lions. Their number 1 receivers are Brashad Perriman, Quintez Cephas, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Tyrell Williams. None of those guys jump off the page as even wide receiver 2s in the NFL. Most of them, at best, would be a wide receiver 3 on any other NFL team. So he's competing with T.J. Hawkinson to be the leading receiver for the Lions behind what could be a top 10 offensive line. The Lions' offensive line could be very good. It's the clear strength of the team. The downside, though, is the Lions, with those receivers I mentioned, might score bottom 3 points in the league. They might not win a game. There's a legitimate chance to me that the Lions don't win a game. And they could score so few points that DeAndre Swift ends up with so few touchdowns that it just doesn't end up working out. I'm going to take Kyler Murray with this pick here. Take a look at where the other quarterbacks were drafted in this draft. I got Kyler Murray in the middle of the 5th round. Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes all went in the 4th round. And to me, all 4 of those guys are not that much different. They all have asymmetrical upside and a very high floor. So I'm happy to get Kyler Murray the latest out of all 4 of these guys. I love when I can get the 4th out of these 4. And I don't really care which one I end up getting. Because to me, they all have very, very high upside. There was a stretch, guys. Kyler Murray was averaging almost 30 fantasy points a game across like a month. His rushing floor is so high. It gives him such a high floor in fantasy. He's like minimum, worst case, his worst week he's scoring 15 fantasy points. In his best week he's scoring 30 plus. And I got him 5 picks before Dak Prescott, who doesn't have any rushing upside but has a lot of passing upside. Gibson or Najee Harris? I'd go Najee Harris over Gibson. I think that Gibson is more exciting from the receiving standpoint. But Najee Harris is one of the few running backs in the NFL that has a legitimate chance at over 300 carries. So for that reason, I'm in on Najee Harris. In your opinion, who's going to be I think I talked about this top 10 pick that I think is going to be a bust. Rate my 8-man auction league team. All right, let's take a look at this, Charlie. You got Justin Herbert, Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler, DeAndre Hopkins, Keenan Allen, Waller, Lamb, and Gaskin. That team, Charlie, is absolutely unstoppable. And maybe it's just because I'm used to 12-man teams, and this is an 8-man league. But you have Austin Eckler, Jonathan Taylor, who are both top 10 running backs and both have top 3 upside. You have DeAndre Hopkins, the safest wide receiver in fantasy football. You have Darren Waller, the second safest tight end in fantasy football. And you have CeeDee Lamb, CeeDee Lamb is going to be this year's Calvin Ridley, guys. CeeDee Lamb is a guy you want on every single one of your teams. I'm back on the clock here. I'm going to be looking at the running backs. Trey Sermon is still there. Chase Edmonds is still there, but I have Kyler Murray. I'm going to take Trey Sermon here. I don't hate him as my third running back. I think if Trey Lance wins that role, there's going to be a lot of rushing yards to be had in that backfield. And Trey Lance could very well lead the backfield in touches this season on a team that's top 5 in rushing in the league. MT for Offensive Player of the Year, calling it right now. I don't hate it. I've been drafting Michael Thomas every single time when I can in the first beginning part of the third round. Got Lamb for 14. That's a steal. That's an absolute steal. That's an absolute steal, Charlie. And I feel like in an 8-man league, there's just so many wide receivers that it doesn't make sense to spend a super high amount. You got DeAndre Hopkins and then CeeDee Lamb. That's absolute fire. CeeDee Lamb is one of my favorite receivers going into this season. Yeah, that's 7% of your budget, Charlie. That's nothing. For those of you watching live on YouTube, let's take a look at this draft board. I'm doing a live draft right now on YouTube. If you're watching live on YouTube, by the way, hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. I do appreciate it. If you haven't tried out Sleeper yet, you can use code Walter when you first deposit. You'll get a $25 match on your first deposit. So you'll have $50 to try out on the platform. But I'm sharing the live draft board right now. We see Mark Andrews just goes in the 6th round. Odell Beckham and Juju. These two guys were both second-round picks. They were getting picked as early as the 2nd round in the past couple of years. And now we're seeing them both going round 6. Don't be surprised if one of these guys is the guys that ends up being league winners in fantasy this season. We've already seen them do it. As I'm waiting for this next pick, if there's any questions in the chat, fire away. We got about an hour left in this stream. It's been a fun one. Thoughts on James Robinson? Yeah, listen, James Robinson, I don't know if you saw this report. James Robinson there was a report the other day, he's the favorite to lead them in carries. And this isn't that surprising if you think about it. James Robinson gets kind of the first down role in the offense. Travis Etienne could maybe come in on some second downs and a lot of third downs as the receiving back. And this just lowers the ceiling for both guys. It's going to be hard to trust James Robinson or Travis Etienne. Matt Brooks, how's it going, man? Odell, you're in on with the value. I don't know about Juju. An old Big Ben in a super crowded receiver room doesn't add up for me. Yeah, Matt, I totally agree. There's definitely a lot of risks. And the other part of Juju is they just drafted Najee Harris in the 1st round. They're going to give him the ball a lot. So not only is he in a crowded wide receiver room with a very concerning aging quarterback, but he's also potentially going to run first team, which is not going to be good for him, but who is a guy that I'm very excited to get a full round after Juju Smith-Schuster is Devonta Smith, Heisman winner Devonta Smith, who is one of the most talented prospects we've ever seen. He has insane route running, absolutely dynamic speed, and incredible hands. He can run the entire route tree. He can be a deep or a short intermediate receiver, and he excels after the catch. He's a guy that's going to come in and immediately be the number 1 wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles, and I'm consistently being allowed to draft him in the 7th round. That's why he's my most drafted wide receiver right now. If we take a second, let's take a look at some updated charts here in terms of my exposure. If I go really quickly, if I leave the draft, go to completed, if you're watching live on YouTube. Take a look at the exposure here that I have to these different players so far in the drafts that I've done. Devonta Smith comes in as my most drafted player. I've done 121 drafts. And Devonta Smith is my most drafted wide receiver. And it's honestly not close. Cordero Patterson comes in at number 2. Quintez Cephas, Amari Rodgers, Michael Thomas, Michael Pittman, Amari Cooper. I don't hate this list at all. I'll go back to my draft here so I make sure I don't miss my pick. Alvin Kamara. What about Alvin Kamara, Charlie? Is that a question? I'm about to be back on the clock here. I got Kyler Murray, Zeke, Joe Mixon, Trey Sermon, Allen Robinson, Devonta Smith, and Kyle Pitts. I do not hate this team at all. 3 rookies. 3 rookies on this team, and all 3 to me have really, really intriguing upside. Honestly, Kyle Pitts and Devonta Smith, I'm liking more than Trey Sermon. I had to take Trey Sermon before Devonta Smith. But Trey Sermon could very well lead that backfield in carries. And if we take a look at the running backs available now, I'm definitely glad I grabbed him because there's no more starting running backs left on the board. Terry McLaurin or Michael Thomas? I would go Michael Thomas. I would go Michael Thomas over Terry McLaurin because Michael Thomas is going to have more targets than Terry McLaurin if Jameis Winston wins the starting role. But I won't be surprised at all if Terry McLaurin ends up outproducing him. I like Terry McLaurin a lot. Taking a look at the wide receivers left here. Oh no. And I took too long to think and I get auto-drafted Melvin Gordon. This is not what we're looking for, at least. Oh man, it's like way before average draft position too. Hate to see it. You absolutely hate to see it. I think I would have preferred Logan Thomas, Jalen Waddle, or Brandon Cooks there. Definitely cannot draft another running back now in this draft, but this is what happens. With a 30-second timer, it's okay. What are your thoughts on Javonte Williams in the rookie running back conversation? Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw the video of the draft room when they drafted Javonte Williams, but they were comparing him to Ezekiel Elliott. This is what their scouts were comparing Javonte Williams to, which I don't think he's going to be as good as Zeke, but if they view him that way, they could give him a Ezekiel Elliott level workload at some point. And if that happens, he could lead running backs in total yards. I think Najee Harris is the best bet to do it, but I won't be surprised if he ends up doing better than Travis Etienne or Trey Sermon. Dynasty temp replacement for Watson, Brady, Darnold, or Fitzpatrick. Definitely Brady. It's got to be Brady. Brady is still going to lead the league in deep passing attempts per game. He has done that. He did that last season, and he's on a team that's done it for 2 straight seasons. Yeah, Matt Brooks, I definitely agree. What is Chris Carson's fantasy value? I think Chris Carson is one of the last running backs I'm down to draft, like in the 4th round. If I look back at the draft board here, I'm doing a live draft on YouTube right now, so you can actually see the draft picks happen as they're happening. And in this draft that I'm doing right now, I mean, I think that Chris Carson, he went in the right before DeAndre Swift. In a lot of drafts, I'm seeing him go in the beginning of the 4th round. Beginning of the 4th round, I can talk myself into Chris Carson. Chris Carson has very little competition. It's Rashad Penny, who's like already still struggling with injuries. They think he's going to start for training camp. Who knows? But Chris Carson's the pretty clear number 1 running back on a run-first team. So there's definitely upside with Chris Carson. Absolutely there's upside with Chris Carson. Just based on volume alone. The concern with Chris Carson is the age and how long he's been in the league. Because we do see running backs really decline when they start to reach 30 years old. Taking Swift 1 in best ball, don't care what anyone says. I love the energy. I absolutely love that energy. Listen, DeAndre Swift is a guy I'm getting consistently in the 3rd round of best ball drafts now, and I'm starting to come around on DeAndre Swift. Originally, like he was going early 2nd round, and I thought that was a little too early. But in the middle of the 3rd round, I'm going to get a guy that could be top 2 on his team in receiving yards, that could easily score 10-plus touchdowns behind a top 5 offensive line in the league, and who has competing with touches with Jamal Williams, who's Jamal Williams is going to take, guys, 30 to 40% of the touches. But if he doesn't take the targets away, DeAndre Swift in half PPR and PPR leagues will be a top 12 running back in fantasy if he can just stay healthy for the whole season. Mike Davis is very underrated. Oh, man. And I drafted Aaron Rodgers. I'm getting very distracted during this draft. I really need to draft some more wide receivers. And honestly, I don't like how Best Ball does this. I had Brandon Cooks in my queue, and they still auto-drafted me Aaron Rodgers. I don't really understand that. But I'm definitely going to have to hammer wide receivers now. And I need one more tight end. Hopefully a few of these guys are available for me with my next picks. What do you think about Alvin Kamara? I think, guys, Alvin Kamara is a guy that is probably going to be number 2 on the team in receiving yards. And when Michael Thomas was out last season, he was literally averaging almost 75 receiving yards a game. He was basically a wide receiver 1 and a running back 1, which is kind of what we saw from Christian McCaffrey in Christian McCaffrey's best season, but he was also a running back one. Alvin Kamara wasn't quite a running back one. He was more like a running back two with his rushing stats. He did have that one game where he scored like 6 touchdowns. That was absolutely insane. Those green and red cleats, if you ever see those green and red cleats, Christmas cleats come out for, and I'm about to be back on the clock here. And I don't know why he drafted Matt Ryan, but it's still, let me refresh here. Very strange. Oh no. It's going to auto-draft me again. This has been a brutal draft, guys. I'm sorry. Oh no. Thank God it drafted me my Q. I got Michael Pittman. Let's go. That's who I would have taken anyway. I got him 10 picks after his average draft position. Absolutely love that. And hopefully this does not glitch out again so I don't have any more auto picks. That's 3 straight auto picks in this draft. That's on Pittman and DJ Moore. Yeah, DJ Moore I like, but DJ Moore's going like 4 or 5 rounds before Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman I just drafted in the 10th round, and I think he's going to be the number 1 receiver for Carson Wentz. I think he could be the best receiver Carson Wentz has ever played with. And I think that these are the best group of receivers Carson Wentz will ever have. I think it's the best offensive line he's played with in a few years as well. So I'm pretty bullish on Carson Wentz, and I like Michael Pittman a lot, but I also can draft T.Y. Hilton and Paris Campbell later in this draft and try to get that Colts stack. I have 2 quarterbacks, Kyler Murray and Aaron Rodgers. I don't love the Aaron Rodgers pick, but there's definitely upside. There's a chance, guys, that Aaron Rodgers plays. And if Aaron Rodgers plays, the teams that drafted Aaron Rodgers are going to benefit massively because he's going to end up being a 6th round pick at least once we know he's officially playing. And right now I got him in, I think, the 8th round. We got about an hour left on... Oh no, you're receiving buffering. Joe Burrow gets picked in the 10th round. That's a pretty good value. If you're watching live on YouTube, are you experiencing buffering right now? Let me know. If you're watching live on TikTok, let me know in the TikTok chat or the YouTube chat. I'm getting a message here that there might be some sort of buffering happening, which we hate to see. I don't see buffering. Cody, this is good news. Thank you, Cody. We're about to be back on the clock. I'm going to be drafting mostly wide receivers here for the rest of the draft. I do like Michael Pittman. I do like DJ Moore. By the way, check it out. This hat's got the new upcoming WalterPicks logo. Very excited for this logo to come. Already getting the merch going. I think the chance he plays is super high. It's just about where. And for fantasy purposes, I'd like him in the 8th round of all 32 NFL teams. Matt, I love to hear you say that. I do think that Aaron Rodgers... I'm starting to warm up to the idea, and I've gone back and forth on this, Matt, I think at least 3 times now. I think I started out saying Aaron Rodgers, is very clearly upset, and I don't think he's ever going to play for the Packers again. Then I kind of went back on that, and it seemed like they actually might be able to make amends, and when you really think about it, the Packers need Aaron Rodgers more than Aaron Rodgers needs the Packers. So then I started talking myself into maybe the Packers do whatever Aaron Rodgers asks, and they are able to get him back. And then I think I flip-flopped again, and now I'm back in the spot where I feel like he's going to play. And if it's not in Green Bay, it's going to be somewhere else, probably Denver. And if he is playing, Matt, he's a 100% a value in any round after round 7. Because he would be in that top tier with Kyler Murray, with Josh Allen, with Lamar Jackson, and with Patrick Mahomes. This is MVP Aaron Rodgers we're talking about with Devontae Adams. Or if he goes to Denver, yeah, he's got Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant. All of those guys would absolutely ball out with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is still one of the best quarterbacks in the game. And I'm back on the clock here. Let's see what the receivers are looking like. Elijah Moore available. I think I'm going to go with McCole Hardman, though. I haven't drafted him very frequently. I'm going to try to get Byron Pringle later in this draft as well. Hopefully one of those 2 guys will end up being the number 2 receiver for the Chiefs. And I'm not expecting consistency out of either of these guys, but I just need a couple big games where Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce are shut down and Patrick Mahomes has to look elsewhere. I'm getting him a solid 16 picks after his average draft position. This is when I'm willing to draft McCole Hardman again. I haven't drafted him very frequently, but he could win the number 2 receiver role, tethered to the best quarterback in the league. So I don't hate it, Cody. But I would love to see Aaron Rodgers play in Denver. I think that would be really, really exciting for the league. Thoughts on Gerald Everett? Yeah, Gerald Everett's actually one of my favorite late round tight ends. Gerald Everett's teaming up with a tight ends coach he's played with in the past. He is going to be pretty clearly the number 1 receiving tight end for a team tethered to Russell Wilson, but it's going to be a run-first team. He's probably not going to be consistent, but I do think he could have some top 5 tight end weeks. I do think he definitely has that within his range of outcomes. I need one more tight end on this squad. I'm probably going to draft him very late because I got Kyle Pitts. I might go for the Green Bay stack too with Scantling and Amari Rodgers. I think I passed him. There he is. Get some of these wide receivers queued up. Rondale Moore is a guy. I mean, he's going very late. Like, he still might be available in the 13th round, and I feel like he's got some upside just with his insane athleticism. I feel like he's gonna have a few very, very big weeks. Again, he's another guy. I don't think he's gonna be consistent. I won't be that excited about him in season-long leagues, but in a best ball format, if he can just have a few weeks where he gets 10 plus touches, he's going to help this team that I'm crafting here a lot. I'm gonna take Paris Campbell over him, though, just because I already got Michael Pittman. And I'll definitely take Rondale Moore with my next pick if he's there. Should I trade Scary Terry for Goodwin? For Godwin, I'm assuming. No. I think, honestly, I would probably keep Terry McLaurin over Chris Godwin. Just less competition. I think Chris Godwin's actually getting picked like a full round after Terry McLaurin in the drafts that I've done. If we go back to the draft board here, if you're watching live on YouTube, I'm sharing a live draft on YouTube right now. It's the 3rd draft I've done on this live stream. I got about an hour left on this live stream. I'm building up my stamina for the NFL season. I absolutely love these live streams. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I appreciate you spending some time with me. I would not trade Scary Terry for Godwin, though. That's not something I would be willing to do. If we take a look, I think Terry McLaurin in this draft, he was drafted in the 3rd round. Chris Godwin was picked in the 5th round. So he was picked a full 2 rounds before Chris Godwin in the draft I'm just doing. So that's a helpful indication that you probably should not be trading away Terry McLaurin for Chris Godwin. I think the average draft position is about there too. Let's take a look at some of these other teams that have been crafted in this league. I like this team at the 12th overall pick. They got Jonathan Taylor and Najee Harris, but I honestly think I like the 11th overall pick a little bit more. Cam Akers and Austin Eckler and Mike Davis, the only 3 running backs he's drafted. And if he doesn't draft another running back, this team's going to have a ton of upside if those 3 running backs just work out for him. Thoughts on Saquon? Yes, I was consistently drafting Saquon Barkley. I was consistently drafting him 2nd overall, like a month ago. I was very confident about him. I have this mindset in fantasy football that I just don't really worry about injuries at all. I believe that every running back has a high injury risk. It's the most injury-prone position in all of sports. I don't pretend like I know who's going to get injured, though, because nobody knows who's going to get injured. Are some guys maybe a little bit more susceptible to injury than others? Yes, but is it at such a significant difference that we actually want to fade certain players and like draft others just because we have this perceived injury risk? I don't think so. But the real concern now is there's been reports that Saquon might not even be ready for week 1. And they might want to start him off slowly throughout the season. And this is a real concern, right? Because any weeks that he's not getting that workhorse workload is a week that you shouldn't have drafted him 1st overall. I mean, in the 1st round, like as your first pick. You're going to struggle without your 1st round pick in the first weeks of the season. So for that reason, I'm drafting him after Ezekiel Elliott. I'm drafting him after Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry. And honestly, I think I would prefer Travis Kelce. Then I think I would draft Saquon. I think I would still take him over Jonathan Taylor and any other player, I think, in all of fantasy. I think 7th, 8th, 9th pick, if Saquon's there, I'll take him. But usually he's getting picked before that. I won last year. Let's go. That's what I'm talking about. I get a keeper. Should I keep Saquon, Kamara, Adams, or Josh Allen? I'm not surprised you won with that team. You had Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara, Devontae Adams, and Josh Allen. I think I would go Alvin Kamara. Especially if it's a PPR league. Definitely not Josh Allen over any of those guys. And Brashad Perriman's still available. So is Robert Tonyan, though. I'm going to take Tonyan at a pretty good value here. I got him almost over 20 picks after his average draft position. Take a look at this. And I already drafted Aaron Rodgers, too. So if Aaron Rodgers does return to Green Bay, this lineup's got some upside. And if you're watching live on TikTok, guys, we are live on YouTube as well. I'm going through a live draft on YouTube. Should I trade Thielen for Chris Godwin? Yes, that's a trade that I would do. I would prefer Chris Godwin over Adam Thielen just because of the offenses that they're in. Chris Godwin's in a team that is going to be number 1 in deep pass attempts per game. Adam Thielen's on a team that wants to run the ball first. So for that reason, I'd go Chris Godwin. And I honestly love how this team's turning out. I'm still disappointed about this Melvin Gordon pick. I wouldn't have picked Melvin Gordon if that wasn't an auto pick. And I took him before his average draft position too, which is just brutal. But other than that, I really like how this team's coming together. And I'm going to have now the rest of my picks for wide receivers. Who would you take at third pick if CMC and Cook off the board? Yeah, I would take Derrick Henry. I would take Derrick Henry at third. Honestly, I think the Julio Jones trade, if anything, helps Derrick Henry. I think it helps him. Because Derrick Henry, it's going to be so hard to stack boxes against him when you also have to keep in account A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. I'm negotiating a trade right now, and you're helping me so much. I'm glad to hear that I can help, man. Glad to hear. I'm always here for some trade talk. As we get closer and closer to the NFL season, these streams are going to be a lot of fun. And right now, this is like my preseason. I'm getting ready for the season so that I have the stamina ready to be streaming very consistently come NFL season. I'm excited to make a lot of content coming as well. A lot of exciting updates for the WalterPicks brand. You can see we're doing a rebranding with a new logo that you can see on my hat. I'm excited for that to come out. WalterPicks 2.0 is coming at you this season. And I'm going to be drafting Scantling here over some guys that I honestly like more, but I want to keep going with this Packers stack because I did get Aaron Rodgers, and I do think there is a chance. Aaron Rodgers plays. I think there is a chance Aaron Rodgers plays for the Packers this season. Harris or Mixon? I think I would prefer Joe Mixon over Najee Harris because I think the Bengals offense is going to be better than the Steelers offense. But I won't be surprised at all if we see Najee Harris outperform Mixon, and if we see him be more consistent than Mixon. Najee Harris has a better chance at 300 carries than Joe Mixon. But I think Joe Mixon has a better chance at more receptions. And honestly more touchdowns because the offense is better. So I think I would probably lean Mixon. But by the way, in the WalterPicks app, we now have the draft tool updated for this season. So if you go in the WalterPicks app on the iOS App Store, you go into the draft tool, the Who Do I Draft tool, you can compare Najee Harris and Joe Mixon right there. I'm in a league where you get to keep 2 players. Should I keep Deontay Johnson or Myles Gaskin? If there's no price associated, Wayne, if you don't have to give up any different level of picks for those 2 players, I think that I would go with Myles Gaskin. I think I'd go with Myles Gaskin over Deontay Johnson. There's just so few starting running backs. Your app isn't letting me download it. Nolan, please message me. DM me on TikTok because we're your friends. You can DM me, and we'll get to the bottom of that. Hopefully that's not a widespread issue, but definitely message me, and we will figure out what's going on there. Akers or Eckler? I got this question earlier, and I believe I said Cam Akers, and I would stick by this. I would prefer Cam Akers over Austin Eckler. I think Cam Akers has Todd Gurley level upside, but don't get me wrong. I think Austin Eckler has Alvin Kamara level upside. So they're both great, and I have them both right next to each other in our rankings in the WalterPicks app, and I think they're very similar options. Eckler has more receiving upside. Cam Akers, though, has more touchdown upside. We got about 40 minutes, guys, left in the stream. I am going to be doing one more draft. I got 3 picks left in this draft. I'm doing live on YouTube right now. I'm building up the stamina for NFL season. I appreciate everyone that's tuned in. This has been a very fun stream. I love doing this. This is one of my favorite things to do. If there's any other questions you guys have, I'll get to them. The squad is coming together pretty nicely. Again, I'm disappointed about the Melvin Gordon pick, but I think this team's got a chance. If Aaron Rodgers returns to the Packers, who is your number 1 receiver on this team? I got Allen Robinson, Devontae Smith, Michael Pittman. My number 1 receiver in fantasy football, though, is Tyreek Hill. It has to be Tyreek Hill right now, tethered to Patrick Mahomes. But I think that the safest wide receiver in fantasy football, it's DeAndre Hopkins. who has had 3 consecutive 150-plus target seasons. No other player in the NFL has done that. He's been extremely durable, one of the most durable receivers ever. And in joining a new team last season, he did not skip a beat even week 1. He was already dominating target share for the Arizona Cardinals, and he's going to do it again this season. Now I'm going to take Amari Rodgers with my next pick. To finish out this Packers stack, I'll have Aaron Rodgers, I'll have Scantling, Amari Rodgers, and Robert Tonyan. Amari Rodgers is likely going to be, guys, the slot receiver for the Packers this season. He could easily win that role, and if Aaron Rodgers does stay, it's going to be a pretty valuable role. And if you're watching live on YouTube, guys, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I really do appreciate it. If you're watching live on TikTok and you haven't checked out our YouTube channel yet, we're trying to grow our YouTube channel to pass 10,000 subscribers this season. That's the goal. And you can be one of our OG original YouTube subscribers if you hit that subscribe button. I do appreciate that. We're almost at 3,000, which is exciting. I'm coming up here in about 6 picks. And I will be strongly considering Byron Pringle with this pick, even though it's a little early for him. If you take a look, I'm drafting these receivers a little earlier than their ADP. But I'm locking in the stacks that I'm going for. And I got McCole Hardman in this draft too, so I'd be getting kind of a second chance at the number 2 receiver for the Chiefs. If Aaron Rodgers goes to Denver, is Sutton like a top 12 fantasy receiver? Yeah. Jerry Jeudy is 2. I think Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, they both have legitimate wide receiver 1 upside. How do you compare players in the WalterPicks app? You go to the Who Do I Draft tool and just tap on any 2 players, and you'll get a comparison. It'll give you the most accurate projection out there in the fantasy football realm. It gives you a projection of fantasy points per game using machine learning. It also is going to give you ceiling and floor outcomes for every single player. What's the best case scenario for this player? What's the worst case scenario for this player based on over 10,000 simulations of the season? So it gives you really all the info you need to make your draft day decisions in fantasy football. No worries. Let me know if you have any questions while you're using it. If you disagree with any of the projections that are in there, let me know. Those will be updated daily as we get closer and closer to the NFL season. We are 2 picks away from this draft being over. Take a look at my receivers here. I'm definitely going to spend these last 2 picks on receivers as well, so I'm going to end with 10 wide receivers. I'll consider Allen Lazard, but I don't love adding him to the stack. I think he's going to be the odd man out in Green Bay. Demarcus Robinson could be interesting as well. I like Nico Collins late in drafts. Nico Collins is a rookie wide receiver, big body for the Houston Texans, who don't have a very challenging wide receiver depth chart for him to work through. He could easily end up being the number 2 receiver on that team. I like Quintez Cephas, who also could very easily be the second or even first receiver on his team. Where do you rank Saquon at the running back position? Yeah, really quickly, here's my updated running back rankings. At number 1, and this is PPR. Number 1, Christian McCaffrey. Number 2, Dalvin Cook. Number 3, Derrick Henry. Number 4, Alvin Kamara. Number 5, Ezekiel Elliott. Number 6, I would go Saquon Barkley. And number 7, I think, is Jonathan Taylor. But I like Cam Akers and Austin Eckler, honestly, a little bit more than Jonathan Taylor, and you can get them later. But Jonathan Taylor has just insane upside, which is why he's getting picked so early. Cigar City Cards. What do you think of those running back rankings? Would you change anything there? Would you have Saquon Barkley higher or lower? The thing about Saquon Barkley is he might not be playing week 1. He might not be playing week 1. There's already reports of concerns about him not being ready for week 1 of the NFL season. This is the biggest concern with Saquon Barkley. Because if he's out there and healthy and getting his normal workload, Saquon Barkley could easily be the number 1 running back in fantasy. He's that good. Staying away from Jonathan Taylor, return of the Mac. Yeah, Marlon Mack is back. Have you ever considered taking Devontae Booker as an extremely late handcuff who could be super value if Saquon somehow does not end up playing? Yeah, it's an interesting question, Matt. And I think he is available. Same reasons for Tony Pollard. I mean, obviously, Matt, the big difference is Tony Pollard's actually very talented. And Devontae Booker is not the most talented. But Devontae Booker, let's take a look. Has he been drafted here? Probably not. Yeah, he has not been drafted. It is an interesting option. I won't do it on this team because I do already have 4 running backs, and that's like the max I like to take in this format. But it is an interesting handcuff option, especially there is already reports, Matt, that Saquon Barkley literally might not play week 1, or he might have a severely limited workload. That could lead to touchdowns for Devontae Booker, who is the pretty clear wide receiver 2 on the team. Barkley's in the 9 to 12 range for me. Yeah, he's going earlier than that in most drafts. He's going in the first 7 picks of most drafts still. And he was going as early as 2 like a month ago, and that's definitely slid, though. He's going more like the 5 to 7 range now. I'm going to take Nico Collins with this pick. I got 1 pick left now. I'll definitely strongly consider my man, who I want to end up being my most drafted player, as my last overall pick, Cordero Patterson, who is the number 2 running back, likely the number 2 running back for the Atlanta Falcons. Yeah, his ceiling is definitely high. Saquon Barkley has a ceiling that is number 1 overall running back every single week. He's that athletic. But yeah, the floor is definitely low, especially if he's not going to be playing week 1. Cooper or McLaren? I think I would prefer Amari Cooper. And I think Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb both have very, very legitimate wide receiver 1 upside this season. Amari Cooper, guys, was like very consistent last year. Very consistent without Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott was averaging almost 350 yards a game before he was injured. And one of those games came against the Rams, one of the best defenses in the league. So I like him a lot. I like both of them. I think Terry McLaurin is also going to benefit from Ryan Fitzmagic, but I would prefer Amari Cooper. I'm more confident in Dak than Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think both CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper can both be wide receiver 1s too, if Dak can stay healthy. Yeah, Amari Cooper is being slept on. CeeDee Lamb is less slept on. I feel like he's a lot of people are more. I actually put out a Twitter poll, I think a few weeks ago. Would you rather have Amari Cooper or CeeDee Lamb on your fantasy team? And 52% of the responses said CeeDee Lamb. People are sleeping on Amari Cooper, and don't get me wrong, I love CeeDee Lamb. But Amari Cooper's been a wide receiver 1 in this league already, consistently. And when Dak was playing, he was balling out. And I end this team with my guy Quintez Cephas over Cordero Patterson this one. Usually Cephas isn't around in the last round, so I took him. I ended up with 10 receivers, 4 running backs, 2 tight ends, 2 quarterbacks. My 2 quarterbacks are great. Could definitely end up, if Aaron Rodgers plays, finishing top quarterback scoring in this league. My tight ends are also pretty good. I think Kyle Pitts and Robert Tonyan, again, if Aaron Rodgers plays for the Packers, can give me top 3 tight end scoring. I think my running backs, outside of Melvin Gordon, give me a lot of upside if they can stay healthy, which, of course, is a big if. And then I got 10 wide receivers. I think I have a lot of upside here. And mix and matching a lot of these stacks as well. I got some Chiefs and Packers stacks in here, as well as the Colts. So I like the floor ceiling combination I built with this lineup. I'm going to do one last draft on this stream. This will be my last draft on this live stream. It's been a lot of fun. This is my 4th and final one. Love that I could fit 4 into one stream. You're drafting best ball right now or another format? Yeah, this is best ball, which is in this format. I always draft a lot of wide receivers because you can start 4 wide receivers in this format. 4 wide receivers. And you only need to start 2 running backs each week. And you only need to start 1 quarterback and 1 tight end. So it makes sense to draft at least 8 wide receivers. If you need to start 4 of them each week, you're going to want at least 8 on your squad. And you don't need to make start-sit decisions, right, in best ball format. So I can mix and match, and I can draft volume. I can just draft a lot of receivers to kind of make up for not drafting those positions early in the draft, where I'm drafting running backs with high consistency and a lot of projected volume. That's basically my overarching strategy. I draft 2 to 3 running backs in the first 4 rounds of most drafts. In this last draft I did, I think I went 3 straight running backs. Or maybe that was the draft right before. If I can get a guy like Zeke, Austin Eckler, Cam Akers, Joe Mixon, Najee Harris, guys like that in the first 2 rounds, and then I can follow that up with DeAndre Swift in the 3rd round. Now I'm done drafting running backs for the entire draft. I'm going to finish with like 10 wide receivers. This is the thing about running backs, guys. Most of the mid to late round running backs are going to bust. They're extremely risky. Most of them aren't going to contribute to any part of your starting lineup the entire season. And this happens like pretty early in the draft too. Like early in the draft, people are taking stabs at guys like Melvin Gordon, Leonard Fournette, Ronald Jones, A.J. Dillon, Zach Moss. Like most of these guys aren't going to actually be consistent running back ones. So by spending early 3 picks on them, I no longer need to draft these guys that probably aren't going to end up working out. Some of them will. The injuries will happen. This is why zero running back is an interesting strategy, which I actually did earlier in this stream. I didn't draft a running back till round 3. I took DeAndre Swift. Jamal Williams is a problem for Swift. He absolutely is. He absolutely is a problem. But the exciting part for DeAndre Swift is really the receiving upside. And DeAndre Swift is also, it should be noted, considerably better than Jamal Williams. But we've seen some concerning reports out of the Lions coaches. This is why DeAndre Swift's ADP has dropped to the 3rd round. He was getting picked early 2nd round about a month ago. But the coaches have come out and said they want to do a hot hand approach. And they want Jamal Williams to be involved. But even if Jamal Williams takes 40%, let's say Jamal Williams takes 40% of the carries, as long as DeAndre Swift is getting the targets and the touchdowns, it's going to be fine. And they also have a top 10 offensive line. Their offensive line is the clear strength of the team, and they have no receivers. Brashad Perriman, Tyrell Williams, Quintez Cephas, Amon-Ra St. Brown, like no one. That would be even a wide receiver 2 on almost any other NFL team. So it's TJ Hawkinson, it's DeAndre Swift. These are the 2 most talented offensive players they have, and I think they're going to have to get DeAndre Swift involved. And if they do in the passing game, he could be an Alvin Kamara type player if he can get enough catches. Matt Brooks, hey Sam, maybe I just hopped in this draft, maybe I didn't. Good luck, Matt. I hope you don't snipe me, but it's totally fine. I'm excited to have you in here. And hopefully one of us can take this home, and we won't collude. Don't worry. But I am excited for this draft to get started. There's 3 more people we are waiting for. This will be the last draft of the live stream. It's been a fun one. And honestly, I'm a little bit even more excited now than at the beginning of the stream because we are like 3 hours closer to the NFL season than we were at the beginning of this stream. Got about 30 minutes left in this live stream. I'll be finishing up this draft, then I'll be logging off. I appreciate everyone tuning in, guys. Seriously, this is a lot of fun for me. I hope you gain something out of it and gain some strategy to help you all out in your best ball leagues. Now we got 4 people that we need till this draft gets started. A.J. Brown with the first wide receiver pick or Michael Thomas. Not with your first wide receiver pick unless it's the 3rd round. And Michael Thomas is a guy that's going in the 3rd round, which is absolutely insane to me and is a fantastic value. It's why he's a top 4 pick in terms of the receivers that I've taken. Take a look at this. I think he's number 5 here. I've drafted Michael Thomas a lot because I'm taking him every time he's available in the 3rd round. The other guy I'm taking almost every time he's available is Devonta Smith. In the 7th round, if you give me Devonta Smith, I'm going to take him almost every single time. Allen Robinson, Keenan Allen, or Amari Cooper. I think Keenan Allen's actually being drafted before both of these guys, but I don't agree with it. Don't get me wrong. I love Keenan Allen, and he has arguably the best quarterback of these 3 guys. It's honestly not that hard to argue him over what Allen Robinson has, but Amari Cooper has Dak Prescott. So I won't be surprised at all if Amari Cooper outproduces Keenan Allen and Allen Robinson at all. I won't be surprised if Amari Cooper averages over 90 yards a game. Allen Robinson, though, is the safest bet out of those 3 guys. Allen Robinson's about to have the best quarterback he's ever had playing with him, regardless of who starts week 1 for the Bears. Andy Dalton, guys, would literally be the best quarterback Allen Robinson has ever played with. This is how bad of quarterbacks Allen Robinson has been playing with his entire career. But once Justin Fields takes the starting quarterback role, he'll have a new best quarterback he's ever played with. Justin Fields is better than Andy Dalton. The sooner he plays, the better for the entire offense. But Allen Robinson's going to ball out this season. I think I would go with Amari Cooper's has higher upside. Allen Robinson is the safest bet. Keenan Allen is also pretty safe, but to me is less upside just because he is a little bit older than these other 2 guys. He's almost 31 years old now. So I think I would go A-Rob, then Cooper, then Allen. And I think honestly it might be like the opposite in terms of average draft position. CeeDee Lamb in later picks. Yeah, you're not getting him that late. You're getting him in the 4th or 5th round is how early CeeDee Lamb is going. Sometimes as early as the 3rd round. But CeeDee Lamb is going to ball out this season, as is Amari Cooper. There'll be no sniping, but it's important because I probably like a lot of the same players. Yeah, this will be a competitive draft, Matt. I'm excited to have you in it. You can't wait. Gonna have to reach. Someone will take him earlier than you think. Yeah, CeeDee Lamb's going early. Again, I put out a poll on Twitter the other day. If you don't follow me on Twitter, by the way, at Samuel Factor on Twitter, I put out a poll. Who would you rather have in fantasy football, CeeDee Lamb or Amari Cooper? And over 52% of people said CeeDee Lamb over Amari Cooper. And a lot of times, a lot of drafts, he's actually getting drafted before Amari Cooper. Waiting for 3 more people for this draft to get started. Best Ball Mania 2 draft on Underdog. If you do If you do try out Underdog for the first time, use code Walter. You'll get a $25 match on your first deposit. While we're waiting for these three people, if anyone has any fantasy football, NFL specific, life specific questions we can get to, happy to answer some questions in the chat as we're waiting for this draft to get started. This has been a fun stream, guys. I appreciate you tuning in. If you're watching live on YouTube and you haven't already, definitely smash that like button. It takes you 2 seconds. Helps us out a ton. We'll see if this draft can get filled up soon. I am leaning towards Aaron Rodgers playing at this point. I'm leaning towards Aaron Rodgers playing. I do believe Aaron Rodgers is going to end up continuing to do what he's best at, which is football. He was the MVP of the league last year. It's just hard to see him leaving the league like that. I could totally see Devonta Smith producing top 15 numbers. Yeah, me as well. This is why I'm drafting Devonta Smith. This is why I'm drafting Devonta Smith more than any other receiver in all of fantasy. It definitely depends on Jalen Hurts' play. Hey, Walter. Hey, Greg. My name is Sam. It's a classic mistake. Don't worry about it. Walter is the AI algorithm that I built to help dominate fantasy sports. It's what we use to power the WalterPicks app in the iOS App Store. Jalen Hurts is going to be the main reason for Devonta Smith's failure or success, because Devonta Smith is a fantastic receiver. There's no questions about this. But what we're not sure of is, can Jalen Hurts support a number one fantasy football receiver, a wide receiver one, a top 12 wide receiver? If he can't, then it's going to be tough for Devonta Smith. He had a 52% or 54% completion accuracy, which was not good last season. But he's almost surely going to get better with Devonta Smith. Opinions on Calvin Ridley versus DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins is the safest wide receiver in all of fantasy, but Calvin Ridley has probably the most upside. I think you could argue Calvin Ridley has the most upside in all of fantasy. Hopkins has the safest floor, though. Hopkins has had, guys, 150-plus targets in 3 consecutive seasons. You just do not see that in today's NFL. You don't see it. So I would say Hopkins is safest, but it's not like Ridley's not safe, too. Ridley's going to ball out as the wide receiver one for the Falcons, and both of them are going to end up being top 6 wide receivers in fantasy. MT or Ridley? I'd go Ridley for sure. Michael Thomas is going like a full 2 rounds after Calvin Ridley, though, which is why I drafted so much more of Michael Thomas than Ridley. Because in round 3, after starting running back, I can go draft Michael Thomas. That's insane. Michael Thomas in the 3rd round is insane. Hurts has great rushing upside. I like him later. Yeah, I like Jalen Hurts a lot too, but if we take a look at the quarterbacks, if you're watching live on YouTube, I'm in the waiting room right now for this draft. 2 more people join. It's going to start, and we're going to do this draft and then wrap up the stream at the end of the draft. But if we look at the quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts is going as the, I think, 7th or 8th quarterback. A lot of times he's actually getting picked before Russell Wilson, which means he's the 7th. When should I start my draft? Ben, the sooner to the season, if it's a season-long league, you got it. What can I join on? So we're live on YouTube. If you want to join in on an Underdog draft, go download the Underdog Fantasy app or go to it on your computer. And when you sign up, if it's your first time using the platform, you can use code Walter. When you sign up, use the referral code Walter, and it will give you a free $25 once you make your first deposit. So deposit $25, you'll get $50. Yo, are we drafting right now, Sam? We are drafting, and we just got our picks. And I got the 12th pick in this draft. I absolutely love it. I see Brooksy is the 10th overall pick, so this is going to be interesting. Matt, I'm excited to see you in the draft pool. I'm excited about the 12th overall pick, though. I like the 12th overall pick a lot. You're able to stack very good running backs in the 1st and 2nd rounds, and you also open up to a lot of 0 running back opportunities with the 12th overall pick. If we see like 9 or 10 running backs go in the first 10 picks, which can definitely happen in drafts this season, then you're getting guys like Tyreek, Stephon Diggs. You're getting very, very exciting groups of wide receivers and tight ends at the back end of the 1st round. So I got the 12th overall pick. You can watch this draft live on YouTube. If you are live on YouTube, guys, smash that like button. Let's see if we can get to 15 likes. I would appreciate that. I know closer to the NFL season, our goals are a little bit higher. But I appreciate everyone that's tuned in. Right now, I've been having a lot of fun doing some drafts on this live stream. This will be the last draft of the stream. We see Christian McCaffrey go 1st overall, rightfully so. Christian McCaffrey should be the 1st pick of every draft. I'm so good at fantasy. If you need any answers, I can answer you. All right, I got a question for you. Pineapple Express, which is a funny name. Pineapple Express, should I be drafting DeAndre Swift in the third round? What do you say? Should I be drafting DeAndre Swift in the third round? Because I have been doing this consistently. DeAndre Swift has been falling to me in the beginning and middle of the third round. And if Michael Thomas isn't there, I think DeAndre Swift has a case to be an Alvin Kamara level player. Who do you think is a good late first round pick? Well, lucky for you, I'm about to make a late first round pick. We see the first 4 picks of this draft. I'm doing live on YouTube right now. If you want to follow the draft live, yeah, I'm actually sharing a picture of the draft board live on YouTube right now. And we saw the first 4 picks: Christian McCaffrey, then Dalvin Cook, then Derrick Henry, then Alvin Kamara, then Saquon Barkley, then Travis Kelce. This is like a very, very reasonable opening to the draft. This is pretty consistent. Now Jonathan Taylor goes. And now you got to be thinking about Ezekiel Elliott, right? Ezekiel Elliott's probably going to be the next pick. I think I would take Ezekiel Elliott before Jonathan Taylor. Then you got to be considering the wide receivers available. We haven't seen a wide receiver be picked yet. Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, and Cam Akers, Austin Eckler also very much in the conversation. Zeke goes 8th overall as expected. Now we are in kind of the point of the draft, the tipping point of the draft, where things can go a lot of different directions. No receiver has been taken yet. So that'll be interesting to see when the first receiver is taken. I could end up going 0 RB. I absolutely love Austin Eckler as well. I would not be shocked if we see Cam Akers and or Austin Eckler picked in the first round. Nick Chubb goes 9th overall. I absolutely love to see that because he's a guy I feel like I always end up taking in the second round that I'm not super thrilled about. I think he's got a great floor, but he is still splitting work with Kareem Hunt. And we're about to be on the clock here. Very intrigued to see who Brooksy goes with. Brooksy goes with Austin Eckler. I think that's a good move. I think I would take Cam Akers usually before him just because of the average draft position difference. But both of them to me are neck and neck. And we see Cam Akers picked. Guys, there was not a receiver picked yet in this draft. Take a look at this really quickly. Not a single receiver drafted in the first round. And so I have to go 0 RB here. Cam Akers and Austin Eckler were both picked. I'm going to go with Tyreek Hill, and I'm going to go with Stephon Diggs. And I'm going to shoot for a 0 RB build. We'll see how this goes. This is my second one of this draft. But no receivers picked in the first round. Tyreek Hill and Diggs is insane to get at 1.12 and 2.1. Both these guys could easily end up as the wide receiver 1s or wide receiver 2. So I absolutely love the start here. I agree that running backs are super important. This is why we just saw 10 running backs taken in the first 11 picks. It was 10 running backs and Travis Kelce taken in the first 11 picks. And the reason this happens is there's such a drop-off at running back. Noel, I agree. You almost are forced to go running backs in the first rounds, but this is part of the reason, Noel, that you got to mix in, especially if you're doing as many drafts as I'm doing, some 0 running back builds. Because what if it is one of those seasons? We got an added game this season, too. What if there's in one of those seasons, it's a very injury-prone season. We see half of these first and second round picks get injured. I end up drafting some of their backups, and I also get the best wide receiver group in the league. And the other thing about this, too, is in this format, remember how the format works. You start 2 running backs each week. You start 3 wide receivers, 1 quarterback, 1 tight end, and 1 flex. So I think about this, that you can basically start 4 wide receivers and only 2 running backs. And if you think about it this way, you could argue that wide receiver is actually the most important position in this format. Noel, my bad, Noel. Thank you for correcting me. I'm horrible pronunciation, but thank you for correcting me. You can manage it with a ton of late round running backs. Yeah, I'm probably not going to draft a ton of late round running backs, but I could end up drafting at least 5 on this team. I'll probably draft 4 or 5. Almost definitely not 3 with this build. And honestly, my next 2 picks might not be running backs because we're going to see all of the guys that I would be interested in. Maybe Chris Carson will be there. We'll see. But I'll probably end up going wide receiver, and continue the 0 running back build depending on who's left. But in this best ball format, I mean, there's just some receivers like Stephon Diggs and Tyreek Hill. They're going to have 40-point weeks. 40-point weeks is what I need for this team to work out. And then I'm just going to need to get lucky. I'm going to need to get lucky in guessing right on a few running back backups. That's all this team's going to need to win me $1 million. That's the goal. We see Darren Waller go at the back end of the second round. DeAndre Swift has not been picked yet. He'll probably go in the next 5 picks, which I think is a fantastic value. Look at this. Michael Thomas in the third round. I absolutely love Michael Thomas in the third round. 30-second clock is wild. Yeah, Matt, I made like 3 auto picks in the last draft, so I agree. 30-second clock is wild, but you get used to it. It's actually really fun. I like that the draft moves pretty fast. 45 minutes is a fast draft, right? That's a very fast draft. And Matt, you'll notice if you do a bunch of these, and you don't even need to do like all $25 drafts because that adds up quick. But if you do a bunch of these best ball drafts, you'll just be so ready for your legit drafts, for your season-long league drafts where you have like 2 minutes on the clock. Sometimes if they're in person, even longer. Got 20 minutes left of this live stream, guys. Very excited. It's been a fun one. I'm doing a live draft on YouTube right now. If you're watching live, guys, hit that like button. I do appreciate it. Yeah, definitely helps me. It also just helps me develop my opinions and realize like which players I'm taking over which players. To me, draft decisions come down to your comparison of like 2 or 3 players. You narrow it down to like 2 or 3 guys you're considering. Then you got to make that final decision. Who are you going to go with? Where do you think someone like Will Fuller should be drafted? Will Fuller is a super interesting situation. First of all, he's going to miss the first game because of his suspension carrying over from last season. Second of all, he's going from Deshaun Watson to Tua Tagovailoa, who's definitely not as good as Deshaun Watson, and he's competing with Jalen Waddle and Devontae Parker. So he's absolutely not going to be consistent. The question is, will he have some of those big 40-point weeks that we saw out of him on the Houston Texans? So I think that he has some upside in best ball, but I don't think it's as exciting of a situation as it was last season. And we see in this draft, Brooksy snags DeAndre Swift. Fantastic pick. I honestly like this start for you. I think that these 3 running backs is a solid start. Najee Harris, Austin Eckler, and DeAndre Swift. 3 guys that all could finish as top 10 running backs. And now I'm on the clock here. I do not love J.K. Dobbins. I don't love J.K. Dobbins. I think he's going to see like 10 to 12 carries. At least 10 to 12 carries, at least, every game. But will he score touchdowns? Will he be able to score touchdowns? And will he be able to catch passes? He almost definitely won't catch passes. I'm going to take Terry McLaurin with my first pick here and continue this 0 running back build with absolutely dominant wide receivers. And I'm also going to take Patrick Mahomes. I'm going to stack him with Tyreek Hill. I'm considering Kyle Pitts as well. But I think it's a little bit early for Kyle Pitts. And I don't hate the Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill stack. I don't like being the guy to take the first quarterback, but I'm really diving into this 0 running back approach here. I have no running backs now through the first 4 rounds, something I almost never do. I've done twice now on this live stream, but something I almost never do. Max Lichtenstein, how's it going? Julio or Juju? Definitely Julio, Max. Definitely Julio. The thing about Julio Jones, Max, and I bet you'd agree with me on this, the thing about Julio Jones is that he's never been bad. He's never been bad on a football field. He's basically always, in his entire life, balled out when he is on a football field and healthy. And we saw this last season. People don't realize that he was still balling out when playing last season. He was actually number 1 in the NFL in terms of yards per route run. He was arguably a top 3 efficient wide receiver in the league. He just dealt with injuries. And the injuries are the concerning part for him, right? The soft tissue injuries, if they don't go away, it's going to be a concern for Julio Jones. But he's still going to be efficient. He's still going to have some big weeks, but he also landed on a team that's a run-first team. He's going from a very pass-heavy team to a run-first team. But the thing about Juju Smith-Schuster, he also could be on a run-first team. The Steelers could also be very, very run-heavy this season. And Brooksy snags Kyle Pitts. Brooksy, I'm honestly liking your team, I think, more than my team so far. You went 3 running backs, tight end. I went 3 wide receivers, quarterback. I'm going to be struggling to find tight ends and running backs who are tough to find, honestly, past this point in the draft. Julio or CeeDee Lamb? I would prefer CeeDee Lamb over Julio Jones just because he's on a team that's probably going to throw the ball more. Galladay or Julio? Another very, very close one. I think Julio Jones is probably, I think Julio Jones is still more talented than Kenny Galladay, but Kenny Galladay definitely has a higher ceiling. You could draft Irv Smith. No, I don't love Irv Smith. The coaching staff actually recently said that they plan to have the other tight end still very, very involved, kind of taking over the Kyle Rudolph role. But we also, Walter's unbelievable. Love the insight. Thanks, Max. I appreciate that, man. But we also know that Irv Smith is on a run-first team behind guys like Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. He's going to be maybe the number 4 option in the offense after Dalvin Cook too. So there's a lot of reasons to be concerned about Irv Smith. Is there going to be enough volume for him? Who's the best receiver in fantasy this year? I think it's Tyreek Hill or Stephon Diggs, who by the way, I'm doing a draft right now live on YouTube. I'm doing a 0 running back draft live on YouTube, and I've taken Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, and Terry McLaurin, and then Patrick Mahomes. Those were my first 4 picks. How about Gesicki? I guess that he has a ton of weapons to compete with too. Yeah, honestly, the late round tight ends that I like, the very late round tight ends that I like are Tyler Higbee's probably my favorite. I think anything after Tyler Higbee, you're basically just throwing a complete dart at a dartboard, and you have absolutely a very high chance of busting. Tyler Higbee has a lot of upside in terms of the touchdown column, with no more Gerald Everett and with Matthew Stafford. But after him, really late, I like Gerald Everett, and I like Cole Kmet and Adam Trautman. I think all 3 of those guys could end up being more involved in their offenses than people realize. Trautman and Cole Kmet especially. Gerald Everett is not going to be consistent, but he could have some multiple touchdown games with Russell Wilson. But I would just wait like super long on tight end if you don't end up getting a guy like Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, TJ Hawkinson, Kyle Pitts, Dallas Goedert. I think Mark Andrews at some level, but he's really a guy that wasn't very consistent last year. I like Logan Thomas and Tyler Higbee as well. I like Dallas Goedert. I think Goedert could be the number 2 receiving option for the Eagles. And again, I'm betting on Jalen Hurts to be really good for the Eagles. That's why Devonta Smith is my number 1 most drafted wide receiver so far. And we're coming back up soon on the clock. Love the app, man. Thank you, Sydney. We have 15 minutes left in this live stream, so I will be getting in touch very soon. Thanks for tuning in. If you can send me any of the info that I need, that would be appreciated. I'm excited to see you soon. Adam Thielen gets picked in the 5th round here. Should you still be going running backs in the 1st round in PPR leagues? Yeah, you should. I'm doing a live draft right now on YouTube, and I didn't do that. I drafted 4 straight non-running backs, which I almost never do. But if you're getting guys like Austin Eckler, Cam Akers, Nick Chubb, Zeke Elliott, even Joe Mixon, Najee Harris, these are all guys that are very, very good in the 1st round. George Kittle is a guy that I like, but I'm more concerned about him because if Trey Lance wins the starting quarterback role on that team, it's not going to be good news for George Kittle. They're going to be an extremely, extremely run-first team. And so for that reason, I'm pretty nervous about the volume there. T. Higgins is a guy that's been rising up draft boards fast. He was a 7th or 8th round pick just a few weeks ago. He goes in the 5th round in this draft. Josh Allen, Kareem Hunt, TJ Hawkinson, all still kicking. Josh Allen, Brooksy. What a snag. Dude, your team is way, way better than mine. I really think I need to start drafting running backs at this point, and I honestly think this team is shaping up very, very well. I'm going to take Kareem Hunt, who's one of my most drafted running backs this season, and I'm also going to take TJ Hawkinson. I think there's a huge, huge drop-off in terms of tight end tiers. Take a look at this. After TJ Hawkinson and Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson could very well lead his team in targets. I'm really liking how this 0 running back team is coming off, and I like that I have Kareem Hunt, because if Nick Chubb is injured, this team has a legitimate chance to win me $1 million. I'm 1 Nick Chubb injury away, basically, and I'm never going to root for injuries, by the way. The 0 running back strategy is built somewhat on injuries, and wow, Devonta Smith in the 6th round. He's giving me a lot of confidence, Brooksy, in me taking him 7th round in almost every draft. So I love to see that out of you. That's a fantastic pick. Your team definitely has a lot of upside. 6th round is honestly where I see Devonta Smith heading. I think that's where his average draft position is heading, but it's definitely a round earlier than I've been able to get him in a lot of drafts. But I still think it's a good pick. I think that Devonta Smith is going to be the clear number 1 receiver for the Eagles, and he's just generally being slept on because of his size. This makes me want to do the 0 running back strat. Yeah, listen, look at the upside of the team. I have an insane upside. But you got to understand, if one of these teams in the 1st round has any of these 2 running backs stay healthy throughout the season, I'm probably not going to be able to beat them, especially if they draft a lot of receivers on their team. This is the approach I have taken in most drafts, right? I'm drafting 10 receivers. And if I can just have 10 boom and bust receivers, they could actually produce similar scores to 5 or 6 really, really good receivers like what I have. And if you have 2 consistent running backs putting up 20, 25 plus points each week, then you're going to do pretty well. But on the flip side, I'm a couple injuries away from having the most firepower in the league. I have Patrick Mahomes linked with Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, and Terry McLaurin. Both could easily be top 10 receivers. I have Kareem Hunt, who's going to be a running back 3, but he also has running back top 5 upside if Nick Chubb gets hurt. And then TJ Hawkinson, who's, to me, the pretty clear top 5 tight end. With 0 wide receivers on my team in round 6, I had to do something crazy. It was like him or Cortland Sutton. Yeah, I probably would have gone Sutton, but I don't knock you at all for going Devontae Smith. I'm kind of a slave to average draft position in some sense because I do so many of these drafts. Like I don't want to sway too much off of average draft position. You don't need a backup QB if you have a good one. Just drop someone when you get the bye. Yeah, agreed. But in the best ball format, there's no in-season management at all. So I have to draft a second quarterback because I can't add and drop players throughout the season. And I actually don't make start-sit decisions either. My best lineup is automatically submitted for me. Take a look at this draft board again. I'm liking how the team's coming together so far. We'll see the running backs that are available as this draft goes on. But I have an absolutely insane start to my wide receiver group with Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, and Terry McLaurin. I only need to draft 2 quarterbacks because I got Patrick Mahomes. I only need to draft 2 tight ends because I got TJ Hawkinson. So I'm probably going to end up with 4 or 5 running backs and then still a bunch of wide receivers because wide receiver still to me is the most important position to draft the most of. I'll probably have 5 running backs though. Will Cam Newton be a good backup option in 10-man league? Cam Newton, guys, is going to be decent in fantasy. He's gonna be decent, but the question is how long is he actually gonna start? Is the 0 running back high risk but high reward? Greg, yes, it is an extremely high risk approach because most of the running backs that are getting drafted at this point are gonna bust. Just historically, after rounds 4 and 5, like you're busting like over half the time with the running backs that you're picking. So it's extremely risky that a lot of these running back picks that I'm going to have to make, they might end up being worth literally 0. They might do nothing for me. They might not make my lineup a single time. That's the risk with the strategy. But I actually read the book that the strategy is based off of. It's called Anti-Fragility. Really recommend the book if you haven't read it. Anti-Fragility. It's the idea of, it's basically the opposite of fragile. The author basically made up a word that didn't previously exist. And it's the opposite of fragile, right? Fragile things break easily. And they suffer when things break. Anti-fragile is when things gain from disorder. That's the definition of anti-fragile. Things that gain from disorder. And the general thesis behind the 0 running back strategy is that as the starting running backs get injured, inherently, since you did not draft any of them, your team gains from that. So you're gaining from disorder, which is the injuries. So I'm not rooting for injuries, but it does give a lot of upside. There is upside at it with the approach. And I think it is the type of approach that makes sense in tournaments where you should be shooting for upside. But it's still not my primary approach. I still think there's more upside in a 3 running back start. All right, let's take a look at who's left here. What running backs are available? Damian Harris is there. I'm probably going to take Damian Harris with one of these picks. Again, he's a guy that I like a lot as my second running back, taking him right around average draft position. And then wide receiver, let's take a look here. Laviska Shenault's still available. Michael Gallup is still available. I think I'm going to go with Laviska Shenault over Michael Gallup. And I'm very glad that I got Damian Harris on this squad. I only have 2 running backs still, but both of these guys should be consistent producers. Kareem Hunt should be a consistent running back 3. He's going to get the majority of his weeks, he should be over 10 points. He's like, we know what to expect out of Kareem Hunt. We know what to expect out of Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt is going to be involved on 3rd downs. He's going to be involved in the red zone. Let's take a look at Brooksy's squad here. I like the 3 running backs that he's gotten. And I like the receivers he's gotten too. Definitely going to need to draft a lot more receivers on that team too. But I'm not hating how my team's coming together. I have now 4 good wide receivers. I'm probably the first to 4 receivers in this league. Nobody has 5 yet. And I arguably have the best receiver group in the league because I started my first 3 picks with receivers. Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, Terry McLaurin, and Laviska Shenault. So I'm going to need to lead this league in receiver scoring to have any chance. I have Patrick Mahomes and Hawkinson, so I could be top 5 in both those positional scorings as well. And I just need Damian Harris or Kareem Hunt to come through. Again, Damian Harris, guys, he's playing behind what I believe is a top 3 offensive line. A top 3 offensive line. I think that it's the clear strength of the New England Patriots. Who is Walter? This is a fantastic question. Walter is the artificially intelligent algorithm that I helped build that powers the WalterPicks app. Check it out on the iOS App Store. It gives us accurate projections for fantasy football. It gives us boom and bust probabilities, ceilings and floors for every player, best case and worst case scenarios based on 10,000 simulations. Powers the whole app for fantasy football, fantasy basketball, actually MLB and NHL coming soon. Mike118 not looking too hot. Let's take a look at his team. He's got 4 running backs. Yeah, I don't love all of the running backs. Miles Sanders and J.K. Dobbins are guys that I'm pretty concerned about, that they're going to be in timeshares in offenses where they're probably not going to catch that many passes. Travis Etienne is going to share a lot of work with James Robinson as well, so there's concerns there. Mark Andrews, he got pretty late, which is good. A little bit after I got T.J. Hawkinson, but still a guy that's probably not going to be that consistent. And then Juju is his second receiver. Yeah, I definitely don't love the squad I'm seeing there. I've definitely seen worse, though. I've been in some drafts where people draft like 4 quarterbacks in the first 7 rounds. Those drafts are very fun. People that are just left on auto pick. But I agree. Do you see Herbert top 5 QB potential with improved offensive line? Yeah, he definitely does have top 5 quarterback potential. That is the upside with Justin Herbert. There's a lot of upside there, guys, with Justin Herbert. And we're going to be back on the clock soon. I have a interesting start to this draft. I did a 0 running back approach. If you take a look at the squad, I took Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, Terry McLaurin, all at or later than their average draft position, which is good. And then I snagged Patrick Mahomes in the 4th round, also after his average draft position. Almost every pick I've made has been in line with ADP, which is good to see. I also snagged T.J. Hawkinson, which I like a lot. And I like being able to, most of the teams I feel like recently where I got T.J. Hawkinson, I also had DeAndre Swift, and I don't really love that stack very much. Let's take a look at the draft board again here, see who's being picked. Tony Pollard going in round 9 is a little disappointing. He would have been a good 0 running back get from me. But I still think there's going to be some guys available that I'm going to be in on with these next 2 picks. We'll see what the running backs look like. Trey Lance goes in round 9. That's pretty early for him. Good thing we already have Patrick Mahomes, so we're not too worried about the quarterback position. Swift is to go. Yeah, I'm starting to talk myself into DeAndre Swift more and more and more, especially in round 3 of fantasy drafts. I'm really starting to talk myself into him. Darnell Mooney, fantastic pick by Brooksy. Let's take a look. I'm going to be considering Logan Thomas, A.J. Dillon, definitely. Logan Thomas would, I think, secure me top 5 scoring at the tight end position. I don't love the receivers, honestly, available right now. Both Darnell Mooney and Russell Gage would probably be my next 2 top receivers. If we take a look at the running backs left, I would probably be able to wait potentially a whole nother round for some of these running backs. Melvin Gordon is not a guy that I want. A.J. Dillon slides a lot in these drafts, but I think I'm going to go with A.J. Dillon still. I like him more than Melvin Gordon and Ronald Jones. I think A.J. Dillon, one, he's an injury away. He's an injury away from being the clear running back for the Packers. There's no more Jamal Williams, right? So it's just A.J. Dillon. But the other part of this is if Aaron Rodgers plays, which is a big if, but if Aaron Rodgers plays on the Packers, A.J. Dillon has actually legitimate, pretty high touchdown upside if he can just get the red zone roll. He's going to take the Jamal Williams role, guys, so he's going to get 40% of the carries for the Packers. And if Aaron Rodgers is on that team, 40% of the carries could be 10-plus touchdowns. So I think that he's a good 0 running back target. Obviously, this is why this is a high-risk, high-upside approach. There's a lot of risk with A.J. Dillon, especially in terms of his receiving ability, and obviously Aaron Jones is very, very good. And he's not just going to take the role from Aaron Jones. So there's a lot of risk there. There's a chance that A.J. Dillon does not score 10 fantasy points a single time. That's a lot of risk to be taking, but this is what the risk I take with the 0 running back approach. And I need the wide receivers to ball out, and there's just 1 or 2 of these running backs to really, really work out, whether that be by injury or by just excelling in the touchdown column. I got about 5 minutes left, guys, on this live stream. I will be ending the live stream a little bit before I think this draft ends. I've been live for almost about 3 hours. I appreciate you guys tuning in. This has been a lot of fun. Absolutely love these live streams. One of my favorite things to do. How do you feel about Devontae with A-Rod might not being there? Yeah, I'm very nervous about Devontae Adams without Aaron Rodgers. That being said, he's still going to be a top 5 or top 7 wide receiver, even with Jordan Love or Blake Bortles, whoever it ends up being, even though they're much, much, much worse than Aaron Rodgers. But without Aaron Rodgers, he does not have a chance to be the number 1 receiver in fantasy, in my opinion. There's just no chance. But with Aaron Rodgers, like, that is his ceiling, and his floor is like wide receiver 10. So it's gonna give him, you know, a lower floor and a lower ceiling, but he's still gonna be good. That's kind of my general take on Devontae Adams. And a lot of Brooks, he takes Aaron Rodgers in the 10th round. He's got Aaron Rodgers and Josh Allen. I honestly like the team a lot, man. I think you're in a very solid spot. I'm interested to see how you finish the draft and what your roster construction ends up looking like at the end. People don't realize we're a little over halfway through the draft. Right? We're in round 10 of an 18-round draft, so we got 8 picks left. And that's like, you know, 40% of your team. And the roster construction that you form with these next 8 picks is crucial. And again, the optimal roster construction that I have found is 2 to 3 quarterbacks, depending on the quarterbacks you get. Right? Since I got Patrick Mahomes, I'm only drafting 2 quarterbacks because I'm going to need Patrick Mahomes to do really, really well with the price I got him at anyway. And I'm just going to need another quarterback for like his 1 bye week. Then you need 2 to 3 tight ends. And again, it depends on the tight ends you get. Since I got TJ Hawkinson and Logan Thomas, I'm done drafting tight ends. I'm not going to draft another tight end. If I didn't get someone in the TJ Hawkinson tier, or Tyler Higbee, or Dallas Goedert, or Logan Thomas tier, then I would have drafted 3 tight ends. But since I got those 2, I'm only drafting 2. Then usually I draft 3 to 5 running backs because I draft them with my first 5 rounds. So I usually have 3 to 5 running backs in the first 5 rounds. Then I'm done drafting running backs. But in this draft, I did things a little bit differently. I drafted 3 straight receivers, then a quarterback, and I only have 3 running backs so far on the team. I'll probably draft at least 2 more, but I'm still going to end up very heavy on wide receivers because, again, you can start 4 wide receivers each week. It gives this really the position you want to be piled up on, not running back, because there's third-string receivers that have tons of upside. Where's the math at? Oh, the math at has gone nowhere, but check it out. We got a new logo coming soon to the WalterPicks brand. WalterPicks 2.0 is coming. And it is coming very, very soon, and I'm super excited about it. I just got this hat. It's the new WalterPicks logo. We'll get used to it, don't worry. The retro logo will forever be remembered. But we have a new, kind of more modern-looking WalterPicks design coming to the app, and a new brand and logo coming. New merch, Yarjman. New merch is coming, man. A lot is coming. Yarjman, I'm excited to share it with you all. We got 32 content creators coming to the WalterPicks brand, 1 for each NFL team. That's going to be officially announced sometime this week. I'm super, super excited about the team that we put together. Pat's record prediction this year. I'm, generally speaking, over the last 2 years, I've been a very pessimistic Patriots fan. And the only one small thing giving me some optimism about the Patriots is the offensive line. I think they have a top 3 offensive line in the NFL. And I think if that offensive line can stay healthy, the Patriots could make the playoffs. But they still lack talent-wise on offense. Their receivers are still probably bottom 10 receiver group in the NFL. They have 2 good tight ends, which is good. I think they're going to run a lot of 2 tight end personnel. I think their defense is still on the older side, and while it should be better than last season, it's not going to be the Patriots' elite defense that we're used to. I wanted to apply for that, but I wasn't 18 when you're hiring, but I'm 18 now. It's all good, Yarjma. Next season, man, we'll definitely, you got to put your application in the pool. We had a little over 3,000 people apply to be content creators with the WalterPicks brand, which was like overwhelming response to the position, which was honestly very humbling. I didn't expect to say no to so many people, and I appreciate everyone that took the time to apply, and we ended up interviewing a little over 150 people. I appreciate everyone's time there as well. It's just exciting to see the excitement about the position, and I'm feeling very, very good about the team of 32 people we put together to be content creators with the WalterPicks brand. I need 1 more quarterback. I'm seeing Justin Fields available, who I like a lot, pairing with Patrick Mahomes. He just needs to be starting by week 12 because I already have Patrick Mahomes, so I'm done drafting quarterbacks now. Let's take a look at the running backs that are left. David Johnson, Nyheim Hines, absolutely nothing going for us here except for Darrell Henderson, who's another guy I like in terms of the 0 running back strategy. He needs an injury to really pay off, but he also could be somewhat involved still, and if Cam Akers were to get injured, I think Darrell Henderson would have top 10 running back upside. Malcolm Brown is gone now too, so Darrell Henderson has an easier path to being a workhorse than he did last season. Thoughts on the Game 7 last night? No. That was an absolutely insane game. I was honestly rooting for the Nets because I had a future on the Nets from like halfway through the season. And if you watch some of our NBA live streams this year, I think I mentioned that a few times. But the Kyrie injury absolutely killed the Nets. I think that it's sad because Kevin Durant was the best player in the playoffs so far, and what he did was absolutely insane. He's one of the best scorers I've ever watched. I think you could make the argument he's the best scorer ever in the history of the NBA. We also average around 500 viewers on both TikTok and YouTube. Yeah, we are definitely on the upwards trend in terms of live streams and the turnout we've been getting. And what we did last NFL season, I'm super excited for the NFL season to be back and to break those numbers, Yarjman. We're going to shatter last year's numbers with the approach we have this season and the time I'm going to be able to put in this season. A lot of announcements coming out about that as well. I'm going to make 2 more picks, guys, on this live stream. 2 more picks. I'm coming up in 17 picks are still a little bit away, and then I'm going to be wrapping up the live stream. I'm liking how the 0 running back team has gone so far. I have a very strong group of receivers. I have 4 running backs that are an injury away or potentially could be involved just as is in their offenses. Kareem Hunt, Damian Harris, A.J. Dillon, and Darrell Henderson. I need a couple of these running backs to work out, and this team could legitimately win me $1 million. Are there possibly any more positions in the WalterPicks brand, like a social media overseer or something? No, not right now. But there will be future positions you can apply for as we get bigger and bigger. If KD didn't have a size 18 shoe, he would have hit the game winner. I know. He was literally inches away from that being a 3. Honestly, if he just wasn't so tired from playing the entire game for like 3 straight games, he probably would have hit a 3 there instead of a 2. He took 2 like very long 2s at the end of the game, which is not what he wanted KD doing. Best sleeper running backs for the season. I think Damian Harris is up there for me. I'm glad I got him on this 0 running back roster that I'm building right now live on YouTube. But Damian Harris is behind the top 3 offensive line. And he is the pretty clear favorite to lead the team in carries. I won't be surprised if he breaks 1,000 yards if he stays healthy. The other running backs will be involved. So Michel will be involved. James White will be involved. Ramondre Stevenson might even be involved. But Damian Harris is going to be the first and second down back pretty consistently, I think, for the Patriots. Got 10 picks until our pick is up, and then we will be closing out the stream again. I appreciate everyone for tuning in. It's been a fun stream. We had about 500 people tune in to this one, which is amazing. I love to see you all here, and I appreciate you spending some time with me in these drafts. These are a ton of fun. Hopefully you learn some things and can apply some of these strategies to your drafts. When the new merch comes out, you should autograph the first 100 or so Yarjma. Do you think it'd be worth more if I autographed it? I'm not so sure, but maybe if you want something signed, I can send you something signed. T.Y. Hilton goes in the 13th round. I think he's a pretty interesting value with Carson Wentz. How can I join the next draft? No. First of all, you got to go make an account on Underdog. If you have not made an account yet, use the code Walter, the referral code Walter. You get a free $25 when you make your first deposit if you use the code Walter when you sign up for Underdog. We just made a partnership with them. Super excited about that. Then next thing, my next live stream, which I'm planning to do hopefully Thursday night this week. Thursday night is when I'm hoping to do the next live stream at starting around 4 p.m., probably till around 7 p.m. Eastern. And in that, if we can get enough people, we can actually do a draft with just WalterPicks, me, and anyone that's in the live stream and some of our viewers. So hopefully we can make that happen next live stream again. That's going to be Thursday. But Yarjma, my signature is also like very, very bad. I have really bad penmanship, very bad handwriting. So I'm not so sure my signature is ever going to be that valuable because people will look at it and be like, did a first grader sign your merch? That's how bad my signature is. All right, I'm back on the clock. Devin Singletary gets picked, which is a little disappointing. I probably would have gone with him. I only have 4 wide receivers. I'm going to need a lot more wide receivers. I'll probably talk myself into Alexander Madison here. And in terms of receivers, I think I'm going to go for the Detroit Lions stack and get Rashad Perriman. And I'm going to draft Alexander Madison as my last running back. Again, he's an injury away. I'm going to need one of these running backs to break my way with this 0 running back approach. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. That's a wrap for me. I will be back live probably Thursday, hoping at 4 o'clock. I'm going to have a very consistent schedule coming up soon and a lot of exciting updates for you all soon. But thank you so much for tuning in. Have a good rest of your Sunday. And make sure you say Happy Father's Day to your fathers, Jay. I didn't mention that. Have a good one, guys.